Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku became both a witch and a hunter? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. They were friends. Of course that they were. Their mothers were close and also supernatural creatures should stick together, right? Katsuki Bakugo came from long line of werewolves. So long, in fact, that it would be impossible to tell if anyone in their family tree ever was transformed instead of being born with wolf genes already written in their DNA. He was old blood and was extremely proud of it. His father, on the other hand, was just a human, but he was surprisingly good at surviving in the middle of chaos, warzone. That their home was. Midoriya Izuku was which, like his mother. Actually, that's why Inko and Mitsuki become friends in the first place. That was result of their extraordinaries. And maybe a bit because green-haired woman knew a lot of spells and potions that could help with werewolfish tantrums in the full moon. That's a really valuable ability indeed. The thing is, when 4-year-old Katsuki got his explosive quirk and Izuku was left with nothing, their friendship began to deteriorate, crumble. Bakugo decided that he is useless and sure, Izuku still followed him, but well, their relationship wasn't very friendly. Especially after River accident when Blonde came to conclusion that his ex-friend is looking down on him. Midoriya tried to fix their friendship, but he wasn't able to. Bakugo stubbornly clung to the thought that he doesn't want to know someone so weak. Not only not having quirk but also not being able to use magic despite being witch. Izuku tried to explain to him that the second one isn't true, that it takes a lot of time, even years, to learn basics, but Werewolf didn't listen. When they were 7, Midoriya decided to step in, stopping Bakugo from bullying some unfortunate kid. He was beaten up, powerless and angry at himself for his own weakness when he met Hunter. Man noticed potential in him, the way he rushed to help even though he had no chance of winning. He proposed teaching him his ways, training him to help people and stop dangerous, inhuman beasts from murdering innocent. He also assured him that he doesn't need quirk for this. Determination and hard work were enough according to him. Izuku accepted offer. Of course he did. After all, he wanted to be a hero and heroes help. Asterisk, caret forward slash backslash dot caret asterisk, dash equals dash. Bakugo was 8 when his life was in real danger for the first time. He was playing with bunch of extras from his class on the verge of forest with Midoriya hovering somewhere in background when someone appeared. With speed that definitely wasn't natural, he lunged at Blonde and 2 of them ended on the ground, struggling for upper hand. Children run away screaming while Katsuki made more explosions in matter of minutes than throughout few last weeks. While panicking and trying to fight man off, he noticed sharp, dangerously shining teeth of his attacker, and he instantly knew what was going on. Vampire. Seeing how much he didn't care for the fact that Sun was fully out and ignoring all potential witnesses, he was old enough to have long ago lost his mind. Now there were only primal instincts driving him forward as insanity took over his mind. So it made sense that he attacked what according to law of nature was his natural enemy, first chance he got. Bakugo's heart squeezed uncomfortably when he noticed that Izuku isn't here anymore. He run like others, but Blonde had no time to think about it. Even if traitorous voice in his head jumped to opportunity to tell him that it's his own fault. After all, Get was the one who pushed him away for his weakness, and now he shouldn't feel betrayed just because he evacuated when he needed help. And it's not like he could even do anything. If even Katsuki can't win, and this nerd would be much more useless. He would be nothing more than toothpick for this monster. Seeing as everyone apart from them 2 fled from the scene of possible murder, Katsuki took his half-wolf form. He wildly waved his clawed hands, even though he knew it was hopeless. But even if he couldn't win, he wasn't going to just give up. If he'll die, then it will be while putting up fight. He'll be biting and struggling to his very last breath. No matter how pointless or useless it would be. He's a warrior, and he won't just lie down and die. Especially when attacked by such a hideous beast. Katsuki won himself few precious minutes, and he got few pretty decent hits before his attacker managed to bit into his neck. Sadly, the same moment fangs sunk into him, he knew it was over. Sure, He still fought and tried to wrestle himself free, but he wasn't able to succeed. He was still young and in werewolfish standards. His eyes fluttered shut and arms fell limply to his sides when suddenly weight on him was gone. He could feel dust in his nostrils and there was familiar voice in his sensitive ears. Kaken! Kaken! Are you alive? Oh, please tell me that I wasn't too late. I couldn't have been too late. Blonde boy slowly opened his eyes even though he was sore and didn't want to do it just yet. He rose his bloody red irises towards his companion who was holding stake in most likely uncomfortably firm grip, and then he glanced at himself. He was covered with pretty thick layer of dust that only second ago was his attacker and would be reason of premature death if he hadn't been stopped. What? You? He managed to choke out, trying to get up to at least sitting position. His vision was fuzzy and everything was spinning around. He would most likely fell back on the ground if it wasn't for green-haired boy who immediately abandoned his weapon, instead trying to help him support his weight. Normally Bakugo would snarl that he doesn't need him, but he nearly got killed by vampire. If he ever gets to have a moment of weakness, then it is a damn perfect time for it. I went to get steak to help you, explained Midoriya, sniffling. A fucking coarse nerd is crying. When isn't he? What do you mean went for steak? You're witch not a freaking hunter. Bakugo protested with snarl although weak one. I'm training to become hunter? What? You're a hecking witch? I know. I just want to help people. Some creatures aren't like us and are dangerous. They want to hurt others and I won't let them do that. I will stop them. Like I stopped this vampire. Izuku exclaimed with sudden blaze of determination burning in his eyes. For a moment two of them were completely silent. Bakugo would never ever admit it out loud, but in that exact moment Midoriya was pretty cool. Kind of admirable. He also killed vampire. Vampire. And that means he can't be that useless, right? And anyone who can kill this kind of monstrous creature, even when using element of surprise, is worthy of being his friend. Hunters are pretty awesome when they don't try to kill him nor his family, he supposes. You're part of my pack, he decided, getting up to his wobbly legs and not even pushing Izuku who helped him stay upright. Huh? Hummed Midoriya, surprised by his words. He looked quizzically at his ex-friend. From today onward. You're part of my pack, repeated Blonde. Huge smile bloomed on Izuku's face. Dash equals dash. Asterisk, caret dot forward slash backslash dot caret asterisk, dash equals dash. Midoriya got scolded by his mother for attacking vampire instead of getting adults' help. She would come to his rescue after all. Mitsuki, though, was really proud of him. Hunter, who was mentoring him, had reaction which was pretty much the mix between two mentioned above mothers. Something along the lines of being irritated at his recklessness and cooing that barely did he hatch from egg and he already wants to soar with dragons. Well, in the end it was one of the best life decisions he ever made because he got back his friend. Most of the school's population was surprised that he once again was in Bakugo's good graces. Especially since he still called him Deku, but reacted rather aggressively when someone, anyone really, tried to bully green-haired boy. It didn't make sense to them, unlike to two boys. For them it was obvious reaction since they both were part of magical part of world and knew how protective werewolf are of their pack's members. And Katsuki's pack was composed pretty much only of him. If he as alpha wasn't counted, he was more of his parents' pack than they were his. And he wanted his own group. He was a strong, independent werewolf. I mean not yet, but he'll be soon enough. He'll drink a lot of milk, and he'll grow quickly. They'll see. Izuku was content with his life. Uraraka felt pretty safe. Sure, it was late, with an hour it would be midnight, and dark, but moon was so pretty, full and white, shining at earth from black sky. She didn't feel like she was in danger. She walked this path so many times before. Sometimes earlier, sometimes even later, but nothing bad ever happened to her. She hadn't even seen any warning sights and it was safe area. Not far away was hero agency and no villain would dare to attack her here. But then she heard branches breaking and none of those arguments could stop her from sprinting faster than she had ever run in her life. She didn't look back, not thinking even for a second that it might have just been a squirrel or some street cat. Her survival instincts told her to go away as quickly as humanly, or even inhumanly, possible, and she listened. Even though she gave it her all, something lunged at her and pinned her to ground. She hit pavement with pained yelp, but she had bigger problems than scraped hands and knees. She turned her head and her heart stopped for a moment. Huge, gigantic, unbelievably big dog. Wolf. Canine was leaning over her, breathing down on her and showing its razor-sharp teeth. For few painfully long seconds, maybe even minutes, two of them looked each other in the eyes. Creature growled and Uraraka could have sworn that even though it attacked her on its own accord it was hesitating. As if it was fighting with itself, bite or leave. Achiko could pinpoint in Beast's eyes exact moment when it lost its battle. With quiet, terrified squeak she closed her eyes, waiting for her demise. Heavy footsteps and yelp of pain later she was free. "Are you okay? Please tell me I wasn't too late," said voice, and she hesitantly opened her eyes and turned around to lay on her back instead of stomach. Someone was standing over her with hand outreached for her to grab. She couldn't see his hair because they were hidden under black as knighthood while eyes were overshadowed to the point of their color being unidentifiable. His only distinguishable feature were freckles dusted on his cheeks and maybe Uraraka went insane from fear, but she decided that someone with such precious dots couldn't possibly hurt her. Desperate times call for desperately stupid assessment of situation, doesn't they? "Why yes. You were just on time," she murmured in trembling voice, taking his hand and letting him help her to her feet. She flinched and took step back when she noticed Beast that attacked her laying just beside. It seemed unconscious but she was scared anyway. How could she not be? In the moment of danger, she couldn't have done anything. Even her quirk was useless because she was stupid enough to run away instead of facing creature and sending into stratosphere. "Don't worry, it won't get up anytime soon," said Boy, and she involuntarily took deep breath. "Thanks for saving me," were her quiet words. Her traitorous eyes fixed themselves on dark, furry Beast. What is it?" Boy scratched his neck nervously. "Simply put, someone who lost control over their power." "So, it is human?" she asked with shock. Stranger just nodded. "Don't worry, first transformation is worst. There should be no more instances like this one," Boy assured her while glancing at Furry Ball which seemed to be soundly snoring on the side of pavement. "And now you should probably head back home." Yeah. Right," she murmured though frankly, she was scared. She knew that even though her home wasn't that far she will be sprinting all the way back. And while at it she will probably keep on looking behind. She'll be lucky if paranoia will stick to her only 1 or 2 weeks. Part of her hoped that mysterious boy will accompany her on her way. Even though she didn't know him, so she shouldn't trust him with knowledge of where she resides. "You live near? I have to take care of him but if you want I can walk with you for a bit," he proposed, and to be honest she knew that more rational and safe decision would be to decline. Common sense wouldn't have it but, "If it wouldn't be a problem for you, I would be really grateful if you accompanied me to the end of this street," she said quietly, ashamed by her cowardice. Boy laid small object that looked like material sack full of something on Beast's head, and then he headed towards direction she was going to take. She quickly understood that standing and watching as he goes would be extremely counterproductive, not to mention stupid, so she rushed after him, feeling a bit like an idiot. She wants to be a hero and she needs saving. She really needs to learn a lot and work even harder. This area should be safe but you'll probably feel a bit afraid anyway, so? He and others like him have really sensitive senses, so if you have it on you, you should be safe, he said, showing her small, material sack. It was different from what he left with Beast. Apart from the fact that it wasn't as big, it also was not the same color, and most importantly it had small cord around it that let it be worn as some kind of necklace. Uraraka hesitated, but when Boy smiled, her heart melted a bit, and she gently took object from his hands. She smelled it and was surprised that it didn't stink. Quite the contrary actually. It had pleasant though sharp herbal scent. She decided to hung it around her neck, and when she did it she immediately felt better. Safer. Even if it was nothing more than placebo, she wasn't going to complain. "Thanks. I don't think I can thank you enough for everything you've done for me," Uraraka said shyly, looking away. Maybe because of his hood she couldn't grasp how his hair looked or what color eyes were, but this smile and extremely cute freckles were enough to liquefy her heart into mess of emotions she shouldn't be feeling towards total stranger. But how not to fall in love? Mysterious, heroic and so lovely. Perfect man indeed. That's no problem at all. I'm happy I could have helped you, he answered and then stopped. That's the end of street. You'll be fine, or should I accompany you a bit further? No need. My house is just behind the corner. Once again. Thank you, she said, quickly rushing towards her home, but after few steps she halted. I hope we'll meet again. She glanced at him, but he wasn't there anymore. If it wasn't for her scraped limbs and strange sack on her neck, she would take this meeting as a product of her imagination. Luckily she had enough evidence to know for sure that mysterious boy existed. Iida was starting to regret leaving house. It was a beautiful, sunny afternoon, and seeing how home appliances tried to kill him, he still could not come to terms with how this microwave had managed to fall on his foot. He decided to go for a city stroll. It turned out to be as bad of idea as being in kitchen. And the amount of cutlery that fell out that one drawer will probably show itself in his nightmares. If it wasn't for his glasses, one of forks would most likely end in his eye. Since when laws of gravitation are so against him? So Tenya once again barely dodged biker who didn't notice him. There were too many painful situations he avoided thanks to his reflex trained in order to become hero, and he was just going to pass zebra crossing when someone caught him by his jacket and pulled him back. Iida's expression was nothing short of terrified as car darted centimeters from his face. On red light. After few deep breaths, he turned around to look at person who saved his life. Of course, he bowed deeply, showing his gratitude. Thank you. If it wasn't for you, I don't want to even imagine what would happen, he said, straightening himself and looking at his savior. No problem. I'm happy I could have helped, answered boy, waving his hand. His hair was completely hidden underneath hood while sunglasses were positioned on his eyes. What a bizarre choice of clothing. I mean, it's sunny but not really that hot, so it isn't suspicious, just never mind. A lot of people wear similar garments. Anyway, the only distinguishable thing about him were freckles dusted on his cheeks. I can't believe this driver was so reckless. Not only did he break traffic rules but also in such crowded area. We all were lucky that you reacted, continued Tenya, fixing his glasses stiffly as they tried to slide down his face. True. I hope that police will stop them before they really hurt someone, agreed boy, turning around to go back to whatever he was doing or wherever going before saving Iida. Thank you once again, said Tenya after him, getting back to walking aimlessly and dodging bikers. Few steps later he heard stranger yelling, "Watch out," and immediately stopped dead in his tracks. Centimeters from him, street lamp dangerously faltered before hitting ground he was going to walk on. Pedestrians yelled, shocked by the occurrence, and then circled around his would-be murderer, murmuring about what just happened. Iida stared at object incredulously, wondering what the freak is wrong with this day. Meanwhile, stranger from before quickly reached him. Are you okay? That could have ended really badly. Luckily I'm all right, but thank you for your concern. And interference. If it wasn't for your warning I might have gotten hurt badly. Boy nodded stiffly and few dark curls wriggled themselves free from within his hood, but they stayed in shadow, which made it difficult to discern what color they were. He was pretty sure it was black, but he could have sworn there was green shine to them. If you don't mind me asking, where are you heading to? Tenya furrowed his brows, wondering where did the subject come from. I'm walking around the city, but seeing how many accidents happen around me, I think I should head back home. May I accompany you? I'm on stroll, without any specific destination in mind, and I would feel bad leaving you without supervision. No offense, but it's not your lucky day. Normally he would deny without second though, holding to the thought that he doesn't need help. As a future hero, he should be the one making civilians feel safe after all. But today, after how he fell from bed, nearly busting his head open on his nightstand, tumbled from the top of stairs, got hit with microwave, was attacked by cutlery. Not even mentioning those mechanical doors that did not open on time and which he hit his face on. Oh, also bikers, car and street lamp. Anyway, if Iida believed in superstitions he would think he got cursed or something. I do not want to impose on your journey, but if it really is not a problem for you, I would love to have you walk with me for a bit. I admit that truly it is not my day, and I seem to fall into embraces of danger nearly every step I take. Even though his words were serious and steady, he felt stupid, as if he got scared by few accidents, and they surely couldn't be blamed on some third party. To the point of needing someone metaphorically leading him by the hand. Great, stated stranger, sending him huge smile. Do you like heroes? At the end of the day, Iida was happy that he decided to let stranger accompany him. For whatever reason, accidents left him alone, and Tenya even proposed going to visit park together. Mysterious boy didn't have anything against this idea, so together they spent few hours walking around green area and around it. After some time they got to small cafe where Iida insisted on buying his new friend dessert for saving him from car and street lamp. None of them introduced themselves, and to be frank, it worked just fine for Iida. Some small, irrational part of him decided to think about a stranger as an angel. How else could he explain those warm smiles and feeling of safety that seemed to surround him? And also the fact that not only did he saved him 2 times, but also when he was near accidents stopped? When the sun started to settle and it was time to part their own separate ways, Tenya felt irrationally scared. He'll get back home, and what then? Cutlery, stairs, doors? Everything once more will be out for his blood. And he knew that it was stupid to think like this, but he was afraid anyway. Sure, it can't be coordinated attack, but it could as well be one with everything that happened to him so far. Iida felt cold breath of death on his neck far too many times today. You don't look like someone who believes into superstitions and probably will think this is stupid, but... Here, said stranger, putting forward small object on his open palm. It was cord with crystal hung on it. Tenya, although extremely rational, took it, wanting to take a closer look at it. After he inspected it, he once again fixed his gaze on boy, who scratched his neck nervously. Bracelet for luck. According to placebo, if we believe into something it becomes true for us, so... If you believe that it will help you stay safe, it just might work. Thank you, but I cannot take it. You have done so much already for me. Also, I really do not believe in such things like talismans, protested Iida, although meanwhile this little, quiet voice inside his head thinking that stranger is angel was yelling at him to just take gift. Please, take it for my own peace of mind. It's a bit as if I left my positive energy with you so it would protect you from accidents. And also reminder to be safe. I really don't want for something to happen to you while you're on your way home. Tenya glanced at object still laying in his hands and made his decision. I am deeply moved by your attitude towards others, and so I will be honored to take this keepsake, he said with deep bow, and then he reached out his hand. Could you help me to put it on? Smile he got in return only assured him further that boy before him must be some kind of angel. Maybe even his guardian one? When Tenya was sure that bracelet wouldn't accidentally fell off, he knew about his habit of gesticulating with more force than strictly necessary. He turned around to leave, but then he realized that he should say his goodbye in more worthy way than taking bracelet and thanking for it. But the stranger wasn't there anymore. So he had to go, and he returned home safely. Without any accidents, which also didn't happen in his house. As if bracelet truly took care of his extreme unluck. Quiet voice in his head telling him that stranger was an angel wasn't so quiet anymore. Todoroki wanted to stay outside as long as possible. He knew that if he comes back too soon, his father will decide that it's a perfect time for training. He wasn't going to risk it, even if he has to go back after midnight. How could he waste this rare chance when leaving house could save him from at least some bruises? But part of him regretted his life choices when walking through dark, deserted alley. He noticed humanoid shadow. He wasn't scared, not really, as he was ready to break law and defend himself with his quirk if the need arose, but this kind of situation would unnerve anyone. Especially teenage boy who didn't even graduate junior high yet. When shadow finally showed itself and attacked, Todoroki reacted instantly, freezing attacker to the ground. He opened his mouth, ready to make clear that stranger attacked wrong person, but man wrested himself free from cold embraces of ice. He blinked in surprise, making barrier between himself and enemy, but his foe jumped over it with inhuman agility and speed, lunging straight at him. Shoto hit the floor with enough force to lose breath for a moment. His world swirled, but he wasn't going to go down so easily. He raised his right hand, ready to freeze his attacker just as he felt sharp pain in his neck. Jump-started by shock and panic, he created icicle that went straight through Assaulter's stomach. Todoroki shoved possibly dead body off himself and stood up on unsteady legs. He touched his hurt neck, while breathing heavily. He didn't completely feel gravity of what he just did. But he did realize how serious the situation is when his enemy got up with crazed hiss of pain. And then it lunged at him yet again. Boy paid the price for his shock, caused not only by lack of icicle in man's stomach and his scarily fast movements but also injury that seemed to stitch itself together within seconds, by once more hitting ground. This time his ice-controlling hand was pinned to the ground by his attacker. Controlled completely by his panic and self-preservation instinct, Shoto used his fire when creature bit into his neck once more. Entity didn't react. Think that looked like normal man, but couldn't possibly be human, did absolutely nothing in reaction, ignoring flames that slowly burned its skin. It was getting more gray but not black. It sizzled, but every time it was getting to the point of breaking under fire strength, it healed to its previous state. Suddenly Todoroki's head was empty and body weak. Light, as if made of cotton. He tried to struggle for a moment longer, but it didn't take him long to give up on his vain effort. If he was going to die, at least he'll take satisfaction in his father losing his perfect masterpiece. Abruptly he was free. Monster wasn't there anymore. There was dust in Shoto's face, which made his eyes water. He lifted his hand to wipe tears, but halfway through it, his limb limply fell back to the ground. He was pretty sure that he was bleeding to death right now. "Hey, do you hear me?" His glazed irises landed on person that his tired mind hadn't noticed before, even though it should. Not that it was going to change much. Not counting dark hood and some funny dots on stranger's face, he haven't noticed anything more. From his place on ground he couldn't even see his eyes. "Okay, different approach. If you hear me blink 2 times, okay?" Why does this voice want him to blink? But whatever. It's not like he has anything better to do. Blink. Blink. Oh, that's good. I know you're feeling terrible, but try to stay conscious, okay? Shoto flinched when he felt stranger had touched his neck but quickly relaxed when he realized that he is patching him up. Phew. He's going to survive after all. Though, is it really reason for joy? Now he has to go back home. Oh no. If his father sees him like this, he will double or even triple his training regime and… Wait a moment, I'll call ambulance, okay? No, protested sharply Shoto. His father can't learn about what happened. Absolutely no. Would be even worse than death. Everything but getting his father involved. Hospital would surely ignore all his pleas to not inform Endeavor about state of his son and consequently make his life a living hell. All right, but please, calm down, answered Boy, taking seat just beside him and helping him to sitting position. Todoroki didn't even notice when he started to fight his body to get up to at least not laying position. He really wasn't feeling well. Who would thought that the day would come where something would hurt him more than his father? At least in physical sense, because let's be honest, mentally Endeavor will always be on podium. His fucking precious first place. So, if you don't want to go to the hospital, where should I take you? Shoto blinked slowly. I don't know, he admitted after a while of olishly staring at stranger, who in turn sighed. There's park nearby. We can go there and get a seat on bench while thinking about what to do next. Sounds all right to you? Todoroki stiffly nodded, and then without further ado, he let himself be helped to standing position. Journey wasn't long, but it surely was full of scraping his legs on pavement and being half carried by his company. It wasn't his fault that his body was extremely uncooperative and exhausted, okay? When they finally arrived at the park, Shoto heavily landed on bench while stranger quietly seated himself next to him. What was that? He asked quietly, leaning on wooden object. Will you believe me if I tell you that it was a vampire? Todoroki turned his head a bit to look at stranger and his serious expression. He finally could see his eyes, but it was hard to tell their color from within hood. Maybe it's brown? Or black? Hazel perhaps? No matter hue, what grasped his attention was how big and gentle they were. Even especially in darkness of the night. It made Shoto want to trust him. After what happened, I'm ready to believe a lot of things, he answered after a moment of thinking. His focus shifted from stranger's face to his hands when they dived to the bag which Shoto noticed just now. After a moment of shuffling, he presented him thermos. Tea, he explained, and Todoroki decided to ignore all known rules of stranger danger. Thanks, he murmured and took object with his still mostly uncooperative hand. Beverage had intense taste of herbs but was warm. Shoto didn't exactly like its flavor but felt a lot better after few gulps, so he wasn't going to complain. So, if it was vampire, who are you? He asked, taking thermos away from his lips and now holding it in both his hands to warm himself. He felt rather cold after getting deprived of concerningly big amount of blood, and he really does need that to live. Hunter, answered stranger with light shrug. You hunt vampires? He asked, just to be completely sure. Also, he was really interested in this subject. Not only, Shoto could feel goosebumps crawling on his back. There are different kinds of those creatures? Don't worry. This area is pretty safe. You were really unlucky to stumble upon that. What happened to it? It changed into dust? What did you do? My ice was useless. Fire. I was forced to use this cursed fire and it did even less. It was an old vampire. Only stake through heart could kill it for good, explained boy, and then he raised his eyebrow. Cursed fire? It's my father's. I relinquish him. I promised myself that I'll become hero without using his power, and today I broke this. Promise, said Todoroki, turning his head away. Why did he say this? He wasn't sure. For some reason he just trusted this stranger. Maybe it's because he has saved his life? Or maybe because he listened to his plea and didn't call ambulance. It also could be the fact that he was sitting with him now, answering his questions and giving him company even though he already did enough for him. He could and maybe even should leave him to take care of himself, instead attending to his own duties, but instead he was still here. Shoto flinched when boy gently laid hand on his shoulder. I don't know exactly what your situation is, but it's your fire, stated stranger, but seeing expression of his companion decided to change his tactic. You didn't have any other option than to use everything you had. You encountered inhuman creature and did what you had to do. You had no other way than to break your promise. But, look at this from this perspective. This fire might have been what bought you precious seconds that decided if you'd live or die. And if you wouldn't survive it, how could you fulfill your promise? Shoto nodded absent-mindedly, although he doubted that flames were truly what saved him. This element could only destroy. His father taught him this very well. It's the only valuable lesson he ever got from him. Tell me when you'll feel better, so I can help you get back home, okay? Asked stranger after a longer moment of silence, and Shoto glanced at him before giving quiet ichim of agreement. To be frank, he was ready to trust him with pretty much everything. If he wasn't so terribly exhausted, he would probably tell him the story of his life and even ask for some advice. Who knows, maybe his father is actually a demon and stranger can kill him. More like send back to hell, but oh well. Both options would be changed for better in his book. His eyes closed for a moment and after few seconds he was laying unconscious on his savior's shoulder. Boy, you can fall asleep on me, murmured Izuku with sigh, taking thermos from his companion hands so he wouldn't spill its contest on himself. Then he adjusted his hood so it wouldn't just slide from his head in the worst possible moment. Ah, there is truly no better costume than his hunter one. To be sincere, he would, metaphorically, say fuck it, and go out without any form of hiding his identity if he wasn't worried about random people recognizing him. He really didn't want someone on the other side of street screaming, "Hey, who saved me from this huge dog / bloodthirsty human / unlucky day / demon / other strange creature." Especially when he told victim what tried to kill them and who he, himself, is. But back to the situation on hand. What should he do? Tomorrow is school day, and he doesn't want to spend half of the night as a pillow. He can't just take boy to the hospital because he seems afraid of it for some reason and, well, he got enough stress for today, tonight, day-night, actually, for whole month, or even year. After few minutes Midoriya gave up and dialed his mentor number, wanting some words of knowledge. Sadly, there was no revelation. He got wake him or leave him as advice. And frankly, there wasn't much more he could do. Unless he asks Mom for some spell that would help him stalk down stranger's house. Not that it was too bright of an idea since boy with two-toned hair could feel a bit threatened with Hunter somehow knowing where he lives. Hey, I know you're tired but you should go back home. Shoto didn't even open his eyes. He murmured his address through haze of being half asleep, and then he came right back to dreaming. And as Izuku's too-good-for-this-world nature would have it, he took him back home by an ancient technique of piggybacking without another word. Todoroki woke up in his room and first thing he did was finding mirror as to make sure that bizarre dream he had was only that product of his extremely stressed subconscious. Nope. Gauze on his neck is still there. What more on his bedstand he found note and small sack which, after examination, turned out to have some kind of herbs inside. I hope I chose right room. P.S. I left you some homemade tea. It's good for regenerating blood cells. I hope you'll get back to full health soon. Oh and no, garlic isn't good weapon against vampires. They just don't like how it smells, smiley face. Todoroki decided to remember two last sentences as most important life advice he ever got. Though he wasn't sure why he was supposed to think that garlic is a good weapon. Maybe he'll learn more on the internet? Also, if the friend in need is a friend indeed, then does it mean he has friend now? Tokoyami wasn't afraid of night. He thrived in it as he was a child of the darkness. True, he had to make sure that there was enough light to leave him in control over dark shadow but, not counting that it was his time to flourish. Gloom and dusk were his closest friends. But this night's stride was making him fell. Strange. In the air hung aura of danger and Fumikage wasn't able to grasp what made him feel so uncomfortable. With every passing second that didn't show what unnerved him, he was losing his confidence. We should go back, something is off, said Dark Shadow, trembling near him. Strange. Normally creature loved their night strolls because they gave him perfect combination of darkness and light. It made him powerful but not insane. Truly, thickness of darkness seems to be crushing even my own soul tonight, admitted Tokoyami, quickening his steps in the direction of his house. Feathers on top of his head ruffled in anticipation of unseen threat. Why was he so paranoid all of a sudden? When he heard strange, wet sound he finally realized that his fear wasn't unfounded and his intuition was right. He really regretted it because what he noticed, thing that emerged from the corner he was heading to, made him understand that he didn't know real terrors hiding in the veil of night's darkness. Entity couldn't be human. Even if it had humanoid face and normal, nearly completely ordinary, long, black hair. Her pupils were no more than pinpricks of famined predator and from lips emerged rows of fangs. It didn't have body. It was no more than levitating head with viscera hanging from inside its neck into view of outside world. If Tokoyami wasn't endlessly terrified and hyper-focused on what approach on escape should he take, he would most likely puke. He was sure for 98% that spleen of this beast was brushing against pavement right now. What worse, and seeing it was already bad enough, creature also noticed him and with quiet sound similar to blabbering rushed towards him. Razor-sharp teeth shone in light of street lamps when creature opened its mouth. Fumikage made step back and then turned around. Within seconds, he was running while levitating head only quickened its pace. He might have not been able to think steps but squish of flapping guts was enough for him to know exactly where his pursuer was. Boy wasn't exactly sure why but it was crystal clear for him that if this thing catches him it will be over. If she sinks her fangs into him, she won't let go. Not while he's still alive at the very least. Dark Shadow. Fumikage yelled with untypical for him fear and friendly creature of night rushed towards terrifying entity, not giving mind to his own dread. He needed to slow it down. When his enemy not only didn't falter but also quickened its pace, ready to meet him head-on and steadying itself to bit into him, Shadow immediately retreated. What if it can hurt me? He asked weakly, taking back his place beside Tokoyami. When even our dear friend, Darkness, cannot save us, what can we possibly do to save our miserable lives? Run. It's all what we can do, yelled panicked Dark Shadow. Two of them flinched when they noticed figure before them but as it had not only head but also body, they decided to risk putting their trust into stranger. Help, squeaked Shadow Creature while Fumikage forced his tired muscles to cooperation and hastened his already exhausting sprint. What happened? Asked Gently Hooded Boy, and Tokoyami stopped just beside him, trying to catch his breath. There's monster, explained Dark Shadow, and all eyes turned into direction from where Bird Boy came from. Fumikage was expecting some sort of creature suddenly disappears act which would make him look like Madman, but no. She was still there. She stopped and her blood-freezing gaze passed from him to stranger whose face was clad in dark hood. After few long seconds of hope that she would retreat, entity slowly, kind of carefully, started getting closer to them. Our only refuge is running, stated Tokoyami even though he was still breathing heavily. He stood straighter, ready to sprint again. Not really. Stay here, I'll take care of it, answered stranger, and before Fumikage could do anything, Hooded Boy was already going in the direction of fearsome creature that could easily be resident of the deepest parts of hell. You'll die. Dark Shadow yelled after him, but apart from it, he did nothing to stop him. They both just watched situation unfolding before their own eyes, frozen with fear. Entity, seeing that one of her potential victims is coming closer to her of his own accord, stopped for a moment to look suspiciously at Figure, but then she started levitating towards him while once again making with this strange, babbling noise. If you're here, who will protect your body? He asked, dodging her charge and rushing forward. She stayed frozen in the spot for a moment. While Boy sprinted towards direction from which she came from in the first place, she finally came back to her senses. With crazed squeak of terror she chased after him. Within seconds both of them disappeared from Bird Creature's point of view. Tokoyami didn't want anything more than to go back home. Most preferably by teleporting as not to meet any other kind of terrifying creatures. But they both stayed, paralyzed by the fear of meeting this awful entity again. Or even worse, stumble upon her devouring stranger and… No, he didn't want to think about it. Imagining the most terrifying scenarios, more of these beasts or it having ability of changing others into her-like creatures, was completely counterproductive. What use was in making himself even more horrified? What now? Asked quietly Dark Shadow. We shall wait, answered Tokoyami, looking in the direction Hooded Figure and monster disappeared. After few minutes he took seat on pavement, hugging his legs close to his chest. He felt so lost. If it weren't for his dark companion he would have gone mad from fear. He already felt as if his sanity was slowly slipping through his fingers because of all-encompassing terror. It was choking him. He didn't want to be here. Oh, he would give anything to just be back home already. Safe and sound. When after undefined time he heard steps behind himself, he launched himself up, jumping away from what could potentially be enemy. Sorry. I didn't mean to scare you, said kind of familiar voice, and Fumikage turned around, surprised to see stranger here. He run off in opposite direction. He circled back, or does he have some kind of teleportation quirk? What if it is actually that awful entity but it has some kind of illusion power? Or maybe it can change shape, or… What if it possessed body of Hooded Boy? What? Where is this thing? Asked quietly Dark Shadow, nervously looking around. Don't worry about it. I took care of it. It won't come back. Not now, not ever, answered Boy, and maybe Tokoyami shouldn't trust him with such an ease, especially since he looked quiet suspicious, but his smile was very good at lifting his spirits and making him feel better, even if only a little bit. Someone with such a warm expression, even if half of his face is shielded by shadows of his hood, can't be evil, right? Should I inquire about what happened with that gruesome beast of thickest depths of darkness? Would you shown some knowledge onto me? Asked Tokoyami, trying to quell trembling that very skillfully tried to become part of his voice. I burned its body, he explained, and Fumikage blinked, surprised. He had so many questions. What was this fearsome creature? He asked finally, choosing his priority. Nukekubi. Yokai, kind of physical ghost. Every night her head leaves body and travels looking for victims. She thrives on their life force. Every night? She'll be back, asked with newly found panic Dark Shadow. Fumikage was equally worried about this matter, though less verbally. No. This nukekubi is dead, but there are others. Although I wouldn't worry too much about them as there aren't any more of them close by. They usually live solitary lives, and after some time one of them may try to claim this area, but there isn't a big possibility of it happening. Not while I'm near, at least. While you're near? I'm Hunter. I take care of those creatures that try to hurt others. I understand, murmured Tokoyami with small nod. I'm immensely grateful for extinguishing embers of that hellish creature life before it could have taken my life force. I cannot put in words how thankful I am for your help. No problem. I'm happy I could have helped, was Hooded Boy's instant reply. No problem? You saved us from monster even I could do nothing against, squeaked Dark Shadow and then suddenly lost half of its exuberance. I'm still a bit scared. If it makes you feel better, I can give you talisman against those kinds of entities, proposed stranger, and not waiting for answer took small object from his bag. Shadow creature waste no time, instantly taking gift and presenting it to Tokoyami. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Look, now we'll be safe, stated creature, trying to force object through Fumikage's head so it could be comfortably coiled around his neck. He in response, took it from its claws and decided to admire it for a bit. Between two stones made of sleek surface shining beautifully under street lamp, was placed wood with strange carvings. It smelt like herbs and resonated within himself, making him feel calm and safe. As if it would truly protect him from what he feared. Once more I want to bestow upon you words of my gratitude. Without your light darkness would surely devour us, said Tokoyami, finally putting talisman on. He was lucky that cord was long enough to go through his bird head. He knew from experience that some ornaments could be problematic with his specific build. No need to thank you. Your safety is enough of reward for me, answered stranger with this bright, instantly making you trust him, smile. If you don't mind, let me ask about your shadow friend. It's your quirk? Yep. That's it. I'm Dark Shadow. The one and only, stated creature with deep bow while Fumikage nodded. Oh wow. That's really awesome, said enthusiastically stranger. And now that there's no more dangers near, would you like me to accompany you home or would you prefer to go back on your own? I do not want to abuse your kindness, but today darkness is too thick even for myself. Yes, please, escort us because we're scared. All right. Tell me when you feel safe enough for me to take my leave, okay? Of course, said happily Dark Shadow, and their little gathering hit the road. Let me ask, what is the function of hiding your identity behind hood? That's mostly because I want to separate civil life from hunter's duties, explained gently boy, and then he laughed nervously. Also I would prefer authorities not to know who I am and how my face looks like, if they ever got interested in what I do. I don't use my quirk, so I don't break any law, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. You don't use your quirk? Repeated Fumikage, surprised. Oh. I don't have ability of this kind, I mean not in the sense the rest of society does, he explained, and wow. Tokoyami finally realized how his friends feel, not being able to understand him and his strange way of speaking. Maybe my curiosity is uncalled for, but can you tell me how did you know where the body of this creature is located? Bird Boy asked, deciding to change subject. There were so many things he wanted to question stranger about. He craved answers he could get and wasn't going to give up so easily on obtaining them. Also he wanted to know as much as he can about hideous monster he encountered. Sure, he has amulet, and he was assured that he's safe, but for a long time he won't be able to feel good in this area. No matter, day or night. More knowledge might make him a bit more prepared for whatever he could encounter. It's part of hunter's training. Usually creatures of this kind think alike and leave their bodies in specific locations they hope are safe. More often than not they choose forgotten, seldom occupied by people areas, preferably covered from outside world. If abandoned building or cemetery is close, then, well, search finished. Or at least eased a lot. Also if you make it clear to it that you want to get to its body, it will panic and rush toward it. It makes finding it laughably easy. Fumikage listened to him very carefully. He would think about this subject as fascinating and maybe a bit exciting if it wasn't for his today's encounter with that beast. Some things are just better left as stories, never to be meet face to f. Are there other monsters? Vampires? Or werewolves? Dark Shadow piped in. Yes, but don't worry. You shouldn't meet any of those in your area. And even if you happen to stumble upon them, talisman that I gave you should help. I'm surprised that our world has yet to learn truth seeping through the cracks of night's reality. How monsters so vile that their existence freezes soul in silent scream of horror can stay so well hidden. Most of them chooses victims under cover of darkness and there are no witnesses that could talk about what happened. As for instances of this kind you're in, when Hunter comes to rescue, people normally are too afraid to talk about what happened. They try to forget about it as soon as they can, telling themselves that it was a dream, nothing more. Oh, we're here, stated Dark Shadow, and strangers sent them two last, warm smile. Take care and be safe. When two of them turned in the direction of their house for a moment and then glanced back at Boy to say they final goodbyes. He wasn't there anymore. But Tokoyami knew that it wasn't dream. No. Today he learned that lands of nightmares can't make such a terrifying creature as nature itself. Fumikage definitely wasn't going to question its capability of traumatizing him. Never. Still, he wasn't going to live in fear. He might take a path of hero, but he'll help other like stranger. Like this hunter had helped him. It was just a calm walk through forest to gather all loose thoughts. Nature was such a tranquil company. It made her feel relaxed in world that more often than not was made of cold metal and unfeeling technology. Everything was calm. Normal and alright? And then it wasn't. She had heard weeping, and as future heroine she instantly rushed toward it to check what happened. She wasn't sure what she witnessed. One moment there was woman's silhouette. In the second she was near her asking if she's okay, and in the third, something was wrong. Air was heavy with something she couldn't quite put her finger on, and she felt strangled. Sadly, Momo had no time to process sudden fear that latched to her, as within seconds she was in stream of water. She wasn't expecting that water would be so deep and fast. Current was powerful enough to make a terrifying enemy that did its best to crush her hopes of staying afloat. Somewhere in her panicked mind, full of chemicals needed to make life buoy she just couldn't get right, she noticed that woman has vanished. She was gone without a trace. As if she was never here in the first place. She pushed her, even if Brunette didn't exactly feel her touch, and then she disappeared. Ghost. Phantom. Yaoyorozu slowly started to submerge and choke on water while her panicked mind was still uselessly circling around all materials she knew. Life buoy, life jacket, even floaters. Anything. Something that could help her, no matter what it would be. Oh, why is this stream so strong? It shouldn't be. After all, it's more of a creek rather than a full-blown river. It's not natural. Not normal. Something is wrong. Is it someone's quirk? Suddenly Momo felt something grasping at her ankle. Though, again, it didn't seem to be a typical, physical touch, and suddenly her head was completely underwater. She tried to shout in her shock, but it just made more liquid go through her lungs, slowly killing her. She choked and felt strangled. While surface was so far, far away and darkness started to creep upon her vision, and again this cursed weeping, and no. She doesn't want to end like this. She can't end like this. Her whole life awaits her. Goals, dreams? She has to fight, she has. Something pierced water's surface, and with last embers of her strength she drew her hand in the direction of figure, mutely begging for help before it was too late to save her. Her hysterical pleas had been heard. Seconds later Momo was on ground, coughing and vomiting liquid which nearly killed her. She felt as if her lungs were on fire. How can life-giving water feel like flames incinerating your organs from inside out? While her body trembled. From fear of what could few seconds more without help meant. From encompassing coldness. From anger at herself became if it wasn't for her mysterious savior she would have been. Who saved her? She looked with shock at completely wet, because of saving her, Boy whose face was obscured by hood. Why didn't he take it off? Is he trying to hide his identity? Is he a criminal? Masked, in the middle of forest, and... How do you feel? Should I call help, or do you prefer to go back home on your own accord? He asked in quiet, gentle voice, and Momo instantly pushed aside all negative scenarios and suspicious that tried to swarm her mind. Stranger whose voice leaked such intense worry. Who saved her, who was the only one that heard her silent scream. He couldn't be evil, could he? Why won't you take your hood off? Was what escaped her opened lips instead of answer, because Momo preferred to be careful. Even if she deeply believed that she could trust him, she wasn't going to risk it. After what just happened, she felt paranoid. Today, minutes, seconds ago, just now, she realized how terrified she truly was of dying. It may sound stupid, but I have a habit of going through forgotten places like this one and making sure no one is in danger. And for instances when I actually save someone, I prefer to say anonymous. Why? She didn't understand him. People liked being well-known, recognizable. They loved fame, sometimes even the wrong kind of it. I'm a bit shy and I feel better keeping my identity as a secret. Also, hood helps me get into character of someone who is strong, brave, and always knows what to do. It's really useful when it comes to giving any kind of support towards people that had run in with unpleasant situation. It's a bit like hero costume for me. I want to be a hero, and every way to get experience is great as long as it's legal, don't you think so? Momo pulled her legs to her chest and smiled. She felt much better, now that she could breathe normally once again. Me too. I want to be hero too, she admitted, and he reciprocated her gesture of lips turned upward. Yaoyorozu subconsciously relaxed. His smile was happy, bright, and warm. It made her feel safe because if something was wrong, he definitely wouldn't be able to be happy in the same way. She knew that he will protect her, not harm her. Oh, that's amazing. If you don't mind me asking, what is your quirk? I can create, she answered and put forward her arm. She pulled her sleeve and made one and then second towel. She gave him the first one, the next taking for her still wet self. Whoa, I'm sure that you'll be a great heroine with such an amazing quirk, stranger stated, and he only knows how badly he wanted to start murmuring and make notes about this awesome ability. Momo decided to dry her face first as to have excuse to hide her blush. She was talented but unused to compliments of any kind. Thanks, what about you if I may ask? I don't have quirk, he confessed, and she blinked in shock, taking cloth-like material from her face to take better good look at him. Becoming hero may be a bit hard, but I'm sure you'll succeed. You've showed a truly heroic spirit today. You've saved my life, she said, and her voice, which started crystal clear and full of strength, ended in nearly intangible whisper. He sent her bright smile. She wished she could see it every time she is unsure of herself or scared. It made her feel not only better but also safe at such deep level that she could barely believe that a total stranger could have such an effect on her. It was kind of like warm honey, golden and sweet but not unhealthily so. Thanks. And if you don't mind telling me, what exactly happened? He asked, changing subject and glancing at Creek. I heard woman weeping and I wanted to see if she isn't hurt. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I think I was pushed, but it wasn't a completely physical feeling. And I also saw her, this woman, but she vanished so quickly. And when I fought with current, something caught me and pulled me down. I know how it sounds, but I'm sure that's what happened. I couldn't have just imagined it. I believe you, he said quietly, and she subconsciously sighed in relief. She was afraid that he would think that she's crazy, or that she had seen things as a result of stress. When someone puts their trusts into your words, especially if you don't have any evidence, it's nice. It helps come back to senses because you don't have to fight with this deep voice in your mind, telling you again and again that your mind is making it up. You just fell into the river and are overreacting. Although she was talented, she lacked self-confidence. Thanks. No need for thanks, he stated, and for a moment they were quiet. He was the one who ended silence. If you want to know, there's a legend about a crying woman. You mean Banshee? Asked Momo, raising her brows slightly. She heard about her, phantom foreshadowing someone's death. Though even if she believed in such things, it couldn't be it. Brunette was sure that the being didn't drown people, instead warning them about someone's death. If her memory wasn't playing trick on her, and it never before has, she had the habit of washing victims' clothes. Also, Banshee made god-awful, easily recognizable weeping-like sound and wore white clothes. And so it didn't really make sense, compared to what happened to her. Oh. La Llorona. La Llorona? Repeated Yaoyorozu with surprise. She had never heard this name before. Boy nodded. According to the legend, she went mad after her husband left her, and she drowned her children. A bit after that she realized what she had done and tried to find them, but it was too late. Some time later her body had been seen near the river, dead. People believe that she killed herself, and at Heaven's Gate she was asked where her sons are. Her soul was denied resting in peace until she finds them. From then on she takes lost children, mistaking them for her own, and drowns them. It is said that whoever see her is going to have accident or there's some kind of danger waiting for them in very near future. It's not night and I'm not a child, Yayarosa denied quietly, terrified by the story she just heard and the fact that this creature, ghost, could be what she encountered. Boy shrugged. There's always seed of truth in legends. Not whole tree, rarely even sapling, he explained, and she trembled. Do you think that she can come back here? She asked quietly, suddenly fearing that woman didn't disappear at all. Maybe she's waiting just behind her, ready to drag her back to the bottom of the creek? I don't think so, answered Stranger with confidence and calmness that made her feel a bit safer. Would you like some tea? Sure, she answered, surprised by sudden change of subject, but when she was offered warm thermos she took it without any doubt. She wasn't expecting rich, herbal flavor she was subjected to, but to be sincere she liked it. It was completely different from what she normally drank, but in positive sense. It was so special that she wouldn't be surprised if it turned out to be high-quality, homemade mix. She truly appreciated it. Thanks, she said quietly, giving him back his property after few more gulps of beverage, and then she nervously got up. I know I'm just being paranoid, but I would prefer to not stay here, near this creek. Of course. You have every right to leave, especially since it makes you feel uncomfortable, Stranger stated, also moving to stand up. Do you want me to accompany you back to civilization? That would be really nice, she said shyly, slowly taking first steps toward place she came here from. In her head she was thanking her lucky stars that boy decided to go with her instead of going his own way and leaving her alone. She really didn't want to be left on her own after what happened. Not just yet. Do you believe in talismans deterring negative entities? He started new conversation and Momo's initial answer was nervous laughter. Then the real one came. After today I think I will start to. Boy smiled gently, realizing that her words were mostly joke, and then he grabbed for his bag. Yayarozu flinched a bit, surprised to see object, dry, It seems that he left it on ground when he came to her rescue, which she hadn't noticed before, but she quickly relaxed when Stranger took out small bracelet-like item made of few crystallish stones. Between them were few metallic ornaments. It should help you put your mind on ease, he said, offering her small object. Oh, you don't need to give it to me. You've done already so much for me, she answered, looking nervously away. It felt wrong to take gift after Stranger had saved her life, stayed with her and helped her calm down, gave her some tea and now was also accompanying her to the more populated area. I insist. I would feel bad if I left you with nothing after what's scaring you with the legend of La Llorona, he argued, and after a moment of thinking she smiled at him gently. Okay, but let me make something for you too. Though I don't know a lot about stones and their meaning, so. Any special requests? She asked, taking bracelet and without any problem slipping it on her wrist. It was just placebo, but she felt much, much better. Oh, that's really nice of you, he answered and then went quiet, seemingly being deep in thought. Lapis lazuli, bronzite, mountain gem, malachite, blue goldstone, prehnite and sodalite. Momo blinked. It seems that you have quite an impressive knowledge about stones, huh? Yayarozu murmured. To be frank, it made her really happy. She knew that crystal and other minerals had various meanings, and if boy was capable of saying which ones he needed in his life from the top of his mind, it most likely made him a book nerd, and she could relate to that. It would be really nice to find someone with similar interests. If you don't mind, I'd like to go to the library. I need to know structures of objects I want to create. Of course. Though I think we should change clothes first, so maybe we'll meet there after half of an hour. All right, she answered with small smile. Spending time with other people always was nice, especially when she could learn something new. Moment later they entered city area, and after choosing library for their later meeting, they went to their own separate directions. Momo was a bit surprised when, after changing, she noticed that boy was already at appointed place. She was sure that she was very quick. After all, she was 10 minutes before time they agreed upon. Though she wasn't going to complain. Her only regret was that strangers still had Hood hiding his face. She hoped that he would, well, befriend her. Put an end to this whole anonymity, introduce himself. She shouldn't think about it and instead focus on what she got. Two of them spent more time on stones than it was strictly necessary. Not that any of them regretted that. Yaoyorozu listened about minerals and their specific uses with pleasure while Boy talked about those animatedly. He seemed exhilarated to have company who seemed to be interested in this specific subject. After Momo made bracelet for him, with stones he requested before, put together on blue embroidery floss, they spent hour more just continuing their prior conversation. Yaoyorozu wasn't too superstitious, but the energy some people believe colors and various stones possess was truly fascinating. When Boy took his leave, she felt her heart squeeze a little with sadness. She really hoped that it wasn't the last time they meet. She really liked him and sincerely believed that if given chance, they would be great friends. Who knows? Maybe even the best ones. Staying close their whole life, ready to trust each other no matter what, or just chatting about some new subject that piqued their interest? Momo met Murderous Ghost, but Counter didn't leave much fear in her. Stranger took it away. He gave her bracelet and lovely spent afternoon that she just couldn't regret. Not now, not ever. And it was enough to sweeten a bit the reason how they meet in the first place. Yaoyorozu felt a bit stupid with herself, but she couldn't stop believing that if she again stumbled upon unnatural danger, he would come to her rescue. And so Momo did not fear encounters with any unearthly creatures. Kirishima really hated his friends right now. Usually he was friendly, he was pretty much the sun incarnated, shining on the road of life with such an endless joy and enthusiasm that even blind could see it. He was nonchalant and optimistic, and most of all he was complete and used to feeling negative emotions towards others. But right now the line of his patience has been overstepped by a far margin. The one that only one or two people throughout his life managed to get to. Let's go camping, they said. It will be great, they said. Why would we take adults with us? We'll be fine on our own. And even if something happened in middle of forest, we would just use our quirks, since who would rat us out? Who could take it to the police? Random bear? Don't think so. And then they've seen something and barely even managed to haul their belongings on their backs before running away with such a hurry that Kirishima nearly missed them leaving when he blinked. So he was alone, in the middle of the forest, calling out to his friends who were nowhere to be seen. He was pretty sure they were halfway back to their respective houses. What worse, none of them picked up. They left him to be devoured by who knows what and didn't even send him SMS explaining their reaction. So he took what was his and went back home, nearly ready to start cursing. He was a bit angry but mostly hurt. Did his friendship meant so little to them that they were ready to leave him behind as dinner for Random Bear? Not that it would be able to eat him with his quirk. Few meters away from where they were going to set up camp and from where his companions run away in complete chaos, he felt it. He haven't seen it like rest of them, and he didn't run away screaming like them, but suddenly it was freezing cold, chills and shudders dragging its steely claws through his body, and its source surely was somewhere behind. His mind started getting foggy with dread as he subconsciously hugged his coat closer to him. And it wasn't even all that was to it. There was also this. Smelled like something was rotting. When he witnessed this bone-rattling howling, something between famined animal ready for hunt and someone's hysterical yell, there were no thoughts in his mind. He was just running, his mind too terrified to work properly. The same moment he began his hectic sprint, he heard sound of breaking branches behind him. He was being chased by something. Something big. He was alone, in the middle of the forest, and it was getting dark. Within few minutes he'll start to trip over every possible twig on his way, and as if it wasn't enough, there was no shelter around. No hope for help. Kirishima really, and he means it, hated his friends in that exact moment. Monster was getting closer and closer while he was too scared to look behind. The only thought in his sluggishly fighting fear brain was run, 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 and there wasn't much, except of terror, to be felt. Even adrenaline rushing through his blood like hot coal and mortification were frozen by this thing, whatever it was, chasing him. At that moment Kirishima wasn't a strong, independent teen wanting to be hero. He was a mere child, lost in incoming darkness and running from certain doom. And when Creature was just behind him, nearly breathing down his neck and slowly reaching for his back with its distorted claws, he noticed light. He didn't care one bit who it belonged to. If he stumbled upon psychopathic cults sacrificing goat, he would hug them with such a vigor as if they were his closest family just for being in that specific place. If it turned out to be his friends, his recent hatred would immediately change into endless love and relief. Just because he wouldn't have to face this god-awful beast alone. So he quickened his pace. Hope let him force his tired and frozen legs to cooperate. Maybe throwing himself in the arms of stranger who was holding bright, not flashlight-shaped object wasn't the brightest idea he ever had, but in his defense he was in an extremely stressful situation. Before Kirishima could say that something is chasing him, he heard unholy howling just behind him, and he quickly realized how bad of idea it was to stop his mad dash. Throwing himself at random person in the middle of forest surely wasn't a good survival tactic. If his life was a game, his world would probably be devoured by darkness with very distinct wrong choice. Try again by now. Sadly, it was all real and there were no such things as save points or loading back to them. Death was going to take him and never give him back. In his panic, Brunette wasn't going to let go of stranger, instead hugging him even tighter. Luckily for them, unknown boy managed to wrest himself free and Idrio landed without any grace on ground. He didn't move, instead looking with wide eyes at a beast that was no more than 4 feet away from him. It looked like awfully grotesque mix of human and deer. It was mostly humanoid but strangely gnarled. It was completely black and had long snout where strangely prolonged skull laid. Through it came 2 massive antlers growing from its head. Its skin was clothed with fur from which spilled forth particles of frost. It every move and breath made quiet sound of crackling ice. With its hoofs it crushed branches beneath it, letting out a mighty roar. It was clear for Kirishima that it was his end. What worse, he'll be the reason for stranger's premature demise too, because instead of running, like any rational person would do, he decided that one more human will scare the beast off. Or that it will. Actually, Brunette wasn't really sure what he was thinking would happen. Creature opened its maw and Midoriya through tip of barely pulled out of his bag torch to lantern as to set it on fire. He felt panic quickly growing as beast turned its sharp teeth towards him. Without a second to spare, he showed burning piece of wood into place he hoped its heart was. Creature retreated when it was centimeters from biting his face off, angrily yowling at pain it was inflicted upon it. Then it turned around and ran away, making its escape on all 4 limbs. It didn't take it long to disappear from his line of sight. Izuku took deep breath. It was close. Too close. Why, from all people he ever met, this one, chased by Wendigo, decided that he needs a hug. If his lantern burned out or if he didn't manage to push him off himself and get his torch, it would be the end for both of them. Probably. Also, Wendigo. What is it doing here? It's too early for creatures of this kind. It's just the beginning of autumn and this is the entity of winter. But since it's here, it would be best to get rid of it. It's too dangerous to just let it roam freely. Its habit of devouring humans, favorably hearts, and never being satisfied could, and most likely would, be catastrophic. Dude, yelled Kirishima, rushing to get up and within seconds taking place just beside his savior. I have no idea how you did it, but wow. You saved me. If you weren't here, I don't know what this monster would do to me, but it definitely wouldn't be nice. Yeah, Midoriya murmured, not having it in him to be angry at boy and his surprisingly cuddly reaction at seeing him. It's not that hugs are bad. Just, there are moments for that and the one few instances ago wasn't one of them. Now please tell me, what are you doing deep in the forest, in the middle of night, alone? If his voice transferred some of his irritation to the outside world, you couldn't really blame him. He was tired of this stupid kind of people who didn't think about dangers of this world, not even supernatural ones, and ended in situations like this one. If it wasn't for them, he would probably have chance to sleep through at least one whole night throughout week. I've come here with friends for camping trip, but they kind of saw this monster before I did and run, and I retreated a bit later than them, so I was left behind. Kirishima asked nervously, looking everywhere but at stranger. Oh, muttered Midoriya with sudden understanding. It's a little better case than he suspected. But it's definitely sadder than just being stupid and wandering in place like this one alone. How could his friends just go without him? He could have gotten badly hurt. Even killed. I'll help you get back to city. Really? Thanks, dude. You're literally saving my life. Second time. I would get heart attack if I had to go through this forest alone after meeting this. Eijiro said enthusiastically, smiling widely and emitting huge amounts of gratitude. Midoriya nodded, acknowledging his words. No problem. So, what are you doing here? You're mysterious defender of these woods or something? Kirishima asked, folding his hands behind his head and showing his teeth in display of his joy. He was really happy that he wouldn't be getting back to civilization alone after all. Also, who knows? Maybe he'll befriend this stranger? He would be such an awesome friend. He's so manly and brave and amazing. And, unlike some people, he definitely wouldn't run away and leave him alone with that beast. Whatever it was. Yeah, I'm witch guarding this forest. Midoriya answered half-jokingly, and then he showed his companion huge smile. It was hard not to get infected with Brunette's enthusiasm. Okay, but in all seriousness it's kind of my hobby to walk around various dangerous places and help the ones in need. Oh, that sounds super manly. How many people did you save? And from what? Are there different beasts than the one I met? Just thinking about it gives me goosebumps. Yeah. I encounter all kinds of monsters. What you met wasn't worst, said Midoriya truthfully. Nukekubi, for example, was a bigger problem. As much as finding place where her body is hidden usually isn't too much of a problem, there are some instances when it can be rather problematic. And without getting rid of her main part it is practically impossible to kill or even stop her. Her head could be destroyed endless amount of times but it would always be back. What even more problematic, she is immune to unnervingly many things. Really? And you can defeat them? Kirishima asked with eyes lit with hundreds little stars of admiration. Brunette was really sad that strangers who did great job of masking his face because it would make recognizing him without it nearly impossible. But well, it's cold and he's not going to ask him to take it off just so he can look at his face. Most of the time it isn't that hard. You just need to know how to do it, answered Midoriya, shrugging his shoulders. Then he stopped for a moment and Eijiro, of course, did the same. Something's wrong? He asked, concerned with sudden and unexpected reaction of his companion. Someone near is in trouble, declared Midoriya with furrowed brows. Not that Kirishima could notice it from underneath his hood. So, we're coming to the rescue? Izuku gave him long, calculating look and then handed over his torch which Eijiro readily took. You need to stay close and listen to me. No matter what. Am I clear? He said seriously and Brunette enthusiastically nodded. As day, sun and torch with which you made that demoniacal beast retreat. Alright, was boy answer, closely followed by going deeper into the woods. Not that I want to turn back but how far are we going? It's pretty close. Something about 300 meters? Though, how do you know that someone needs help? And where they are? Magic? Stranger said with jazz hands which instantly made Kirishima feel a bit more relaxed. He hadn't even noticed when he tensed again. Seriously dude, how? It's sense of finding suicidal people in the middle of the forest who are just asking to be eaten. Oh, so that's your quirk? Let's say so, Stranger murmured, though Kirishima noticed suspicious twist in his expression. Lips to be precise. Even with his expression hidden by his hood, he could guess that his companion feels aversion toward this subject. But, okay so, the person, the one in trouble, are they being chased by the thing that tried to eat me? I don't think so. While we're in this forest it will most likely focus on your scent. Kirishima gulped. That's, while you're here I'm safe, right? While you have fire, you're safe, corrected Midoriya and before Eijiro could vocalize his worries, he continued talking. This torch should burn for the next few hours and I don't think it's possible to extinguish it without drowning it. Thanks. By the way, where did you take it from? And how did you know you'd need it? I have a lot of useful objects in my bag, Izuku explained, showing thing that strap on his shoulder was connected to. Oh, I have no idea how you pushed it down there, but it's extremely cool that you're so prepared. I guess that you have perfect weapon against anything we might stumble upon in this forest, right? Yeah, I think I do. Kirishima didn't get the chance to continue because they both heard really panicked, definitely feminine voice yelling, "Begone demon." Midoriya rushed forward and Kirishima was close behind. It didn't take them long to cross paths with a humanoid figure. Monster! Eijiro yelled, getting good grip on Midoriya's shoulder and barely avoiding setting him on fire. Excuse me? I'm a victim here, person they met protested with indignation so strong it nearly overthrew fear in her voice. Oh, sorry, Brunette mumbled, letting go of his hooded companion and apologizing quietly with sheepish smile. Girl they stumbled upon had pink skin and hair of similar color which from protruded two small horns. She didn't look particularly scary, but in his defense her black eyes were unnerving. Especially when light of torch hit them, making her rises shine inhumanly brightly with truly golden hue. What happened? We had heard your scream, Midoriya asked, and her unnaturally colored orbs instantly landed on him. There's something in this forest. I'm not exactly sure what, but I swear that it is strange and walks on all four limbs. And it's definitely not some kind of animal. At least not normal one. It's mutated, bald monkey at most, she answered, walking closer to them, and even though she looked pretty self-confident, she trembled a bit. Also, her readiness to get close to two strangers in the middle of forest was telling of her emotional state towards things she crossed paths with. Don't worry. This dude knows how to defeat it, whatever it is. Kirishima said enthusiastically, nodding towards Izuku in acknowledge of his utmost power. Really? You're some kind of monster hunter or something? Mina asked, eyes shining with hope of survival. Actually, yes, that's basically what I am, he answered with small smile. Oh, that means that we're saved, the girl yelled, throwing her hands up in the gesture of happiness. And since you're Hunter, who is he? You're his sidekick or what? No. I'm poor soul lost in forest and chased by some kind of monster, just like you, was Kirishima's answer, shortly followed by huge smile full of razor-sharp teeth. Ooh, cool. So, you up to being nearly doomed brothers who barely escaped with their lives from demoniacal creatures of these woods? The girl proposed, getting closer to him and getting ready for bump fist she, of course, received. Sure thing. Happy moment was cut short by rustling in near bushes. After few seconds of complete silence when Mina and Kirishima stayed completely motionless, Midoriya took few, cautious steps forward to meet the incoming danger. He didn't have to wait long for creature to show itself. Entity moved on its all four limbs and had a rather humanoid figure. Skin of strange being was gray, silhouette slim and eyes were strangely hollow. It made quiet sound which could possibly be mistaken as human speech, but even if it made sense to itself, Eijiro nor Ishido had no idea what it was trying to convey. Stay here and don't move. If Wendigo comes, defend yourself with fire. Its heart is made of ice, so if it gets too close it will melt, killing it on the spot. It may try to scare you into running and getting lost in the forest. Don't let it do that. With this torch you're safe. What are you planning to do? Mina asked quietly and with sudden insecurity, looking at the hooded boy who approached scary creature with steady pace. The one she was running from not even minutes ago. Talk, he answered before disappearing behind bushes into which entity retreated. Is he serious? She asked in whisper yell, looking at Brunette. Something is terrifying. I'm sure he knows what he's doing, Kirishima murmured, although his heart was squeezed uncomfortably tight with fear. Yeah. He knows what he's doing if he wants to die, the girl yelled, and then she froze. She slowly turned around to look behind her. She heard branches being crushed and it came from completely different direction than the strange creature and hooded boy went to. And it also seemed heavier. She squeaked and hugged her companion when she noticed the beast before her made completely new definition of word scary and instantly overshadowed whatever initial terror she felt toward creature she stumbled upon minutes ago. Is this what we have to defend yourself from with just torch? she whispered, and her voice trembled from dread she was feeling. Kirishima only nodded stiffly. He trusted stranger, but every part of him yelled at him that he should run. Is this one relatively small flame capable of defeating monster? If it was true, beast wouldn't risk it, right? It wouldn't try to get closer. Two teenagers held each other, and in Eijiro's case also the only weapon they had for dear life while watching creatures slowly circle them. And then suddenly its head turned around to look at bushes where hooded stranger and humanoid being from before disappeared. It slowly made its way toward it. Oh no, it's going there. And we're the ones with torch? What should we do? We need to do something, Mina stated in panic tone, and then she let go of Kirishima. He looked at her, not quite comprehending what she is doing, as she leaned down to get hold of random branch. Then he watched her, frozen in fear, as she took swing and threw her newly found weapon at monster with all her might. She also yelled, "We are here, ugly face." She managed to hit Wendigo in its head, and creature instantly turned towards them and as it jumped towards them, Kirishima instinctively put forward torch, having no time to think about any other way out of certain death. Entity ended its flight, pushing its limbs, claws, hands, into ground, and with pained howl it retreated. Part of its skin started to melt. Oh yeah, that was totally awesome. Mina yelled and then made some more enthusiastic sounds of victory. 1-0 for us. It seems we're a pretty decent team when it comes to survival and not being eaten alive. Monsters should be scared of us, not the other way around. Alright, Kirishima agreed, although weakly. His heartbeat was so fast that he was worried one of his most important organs would run far away from him. Also, his nerves were frayed. But it might have been better for him, as it made him more focused, and thanks to that he managed to notice the exact moment when Wendigo got angry. More like pissed off, to be frank. Beast made the worst sound Eijiro had unpleasantry of hearing from it, from anything, and it gripped nearby bush, plucking it out of the ground with its roots. What happened next will most definitely stay in his mind forever, coming back in his worst nightmares. Creature threw plant at them and they jumped back with shocked outcries. Mina landed at left and Kirishima on right of massive mess of wood and leaves. What worse, brunette tripped on something, probably some branch or stone, because of his rush dodge, and ended on ground without any grace. He barely managed to not let go of torch, which flame faltered for a moment. Eijiro just managed to raise his head when beast charged at them. Untold watch out died on his lips while monster rushed to get grip on Mina, and for an awfully long second he was sure that it's her end. He would watch as beast mutilated her, unable to do anything. Then something lunged from nearby bushes. Stripe of gray wrestled torch out of his hands while he was trying to process what was happening and buried it deep into Wendigo's chest. With hideous, blood-freezing roar quickly turning into squeak of dying animal, it collapsed to the ground. Most of its body melted. Only skull and antlers remained. Kirishima laid on the ground, uncooperative and unable to move, watching creature that saved them. Entity that Mina stumbled upon. The same beast stranger went to talk with. It slowly rose from its all-fours posture to proudly standing on its legs, looking at remains of hideous monster it just killed. Torch still safely burned in its clawed hands. After a few very long seconds and as many much quicker steps, there was hooded figure beside inhuman entity. Phew, that was close, he murmured with sigh of relief and then directed his words directly at gray creature. Thanks, I don't think I would make it in time. It answered in language that once again sounded human enough, but unlike anything Kirishima ever had contact with. He definitely didn't understand it. Yes, of course. And no, thanks for your help. Eijiro looked with bewilderment and endless incredulity as stranger got along perfectly well with creature that most likely talked in a long-forgotten, ancient language of monsters. His manliness and awesomeness was tripled. At the very least. We should take our leave, boy said, taking his torch back and then directing his steps towards his two human companions. Creature stayed behind, going back to standing on all fours and occupying itself with rummaging through corpse of defeated enemy. Kirishima would be scared to turn his back to it, even if it kind of saved their lives. I was starting to think you'd never say that. Mina answered with loud sigh of relief and quickly turned towards direction she thought would take them back to the civilization. Hooded figure helped her to get the right path by taking lead, and Ijiro quickly took place just beside him. After a few steps he was rewarded with torch, given him by his favorite stranger. Probably because Mina took place at his other side, and he didn't want to burn anyone around him. Being flanked while holding fire is pretty dangerous, okay? So, I've met a pretty cool monster, yeah? Ashido asked with surprisingly happy tone. It seemed that near-death experience didn't make that big of impression on her. You can say so, but for future reference, if you met something like this, please, don't try to interact with it and leave as quickly as you can. Also, it would be best to find someone to accompany you. Why? She asked, surprised. I mean, he helped us, so he's a nice guy, right? Boy sighed. More of a neutral creature. I was able to get along with him, so he was friendly, but without me, well, skinwalkers aren't creatures you want to mess around with. Skinwalkers? A really worrisome name. Kirishima joined the conversation. They can take appearance of anything which skin they possess. Midoriya explained, and suddenly brunette paled considerably. Not more than Mina though. If you hadn't arrived when you did, and if you didn't manage to come to agreement with this, would it? The girl asked quietly but decided against finishing her sentence. She was pretty sure they would understand what she was worried about anyway, and she wasn't sure if she was capable of saying the worst possible outcome for her aloud. Most likely, Hunter said. That's why you said someone was in danger, Ijiro murmured, feeling goosebumps all over his back. Actually, how did you convince this thing not to eat us? And why it didn't want to take your skin? He was grateful that I warned him about Wendigo's presence in his forest, he explained. And then for a fire I brought with me here. Without it he would have problem with this creature. In fair fight, with no outside help, he would most likely lose and get devoured. Wow, so you indirectly saved his life too, noticed Mina, trying to lift spirits. He came to the same conclusion, the boy answered, shrugging. By the way, what are you doing here? Alone in the middle of night? So deep in forest? You see, I might have made a bet with my friends that I'll spend hour here, alone. They're waiting for me on the outskirt of forest from the city side, she answered with nervous laughter. Also, I kind of run pretty far when I noticed this whole skinwalker. Boy face-bombed his hidden by hood forehead. People like of you die first in horrors, he stated solemnly. Hey, not true. I mean, look at me. I look like monsters, so it's a simple conclusion that if I met some beast it would adopt me. Though today kind of proved me wrong. That's because I was really unlucky. Yeah, that's it, she denied vehemently, pouting. And for your knowledge, if I didn't return after appointed time my dudes would call help. I'll help you get back to your friends, okay? He answered, completely changing subject, and Mina instantly brightened up. Thanks to all my lucky stars. I would succumb to heart attack if I had to come back to them alone after all that happened. I told him nearly the same thing when he said he would help me find civilization. Kirishima added, joining conversation once again. He could feel his fear drifting away with those peculiar people. Stranger's presence was really calming while girl's enthusiasm was really helpful in forgetting that some kind of ice beast tried to eat him not even 5 minutes ago. Being nearly devoured brothers obliges, Mina stated happily, once again getting ready for bump fist she of course got. By the way, where do you live? If you want you can go with me and my cool pals. Unless you have your own dudes waiting for you. That's fine too, no problemo at allo. I'll let you go, though not without tears. Kirishima grimaced a bit. They run away screaming and left me to get eaten alive by this wendigo thing. Yeah. They were silent for a moment. So how do you know where are we going? Because you know where are we going, right? Mina asked, looking curiously at hooded stranger. There's only one city that is close enough for you to come without few days long trip through wilderness. That's where we're heading. Oh, you must have really awesome sense of direction to know where it is. I have no freaking idea where we are after all those monster encounters, Mina said, laughing. You grow used to navigating through forests when you help people with suicidal bets as often as I do, he stated with shrug and small smile gracing his features. I was fighting for week-long supply of my favorite snacks, okay? For them I'm ready to even spend night in scary forest. Actually, after today, I'm not anymore, she exclaimed, but her mood quickly changed, and she grinned widely. Right? I should share my fairly one food with you because if you weren't here, well, I wouldn't survive long enough to get it. No need. I'm happy that I could have helped, the boy answered with kind of shy smile and nervous wave of hand. Dude, you literally saved our lives. Exactly, if wasn't for you someone would be running around in my skin. Oh, that sounds a bit really scary. We nearly got eaten alive. Nah, what could we be possibly afraid of? Kirishima asked with jokingly sarcastic tone which made girl laugh. It wasn't long until she was leaning towards him to playfully push. She didn't notice that stranger wasn't between them anymore. It isn't this important, right? She and her bro must have got a little ahead of him while having pseudo-quarrel. PFFF, he couldn't have just vanished into thin air when they blinked or something. Oh look, I see light. And my dudes, the girl said enthusiastically, glancing behind to talk with hooded stranger. Ooh. Mina stopped dead in her tracks, looking with shocked expression at empty space behind her. He was here, I hadn't just imagined him, right? She asked with still widely opened eyes, now fixing her gaze on Kirishima who looked equally surprised. Unless he was double hallucination then no. He was here a moment ago, he agreed readily. And you still have his torch, she added, swirling around to make sure that he really is nowhere near to be seen. Hey Mina, is it you or should we run screaming like little girls? Yelled familiar to her voice and she jumped a little, surprised by it. Normally I would say that no. I'm not me but monster of these woods but I barely escaped with my life so you know. No jokes, she screamed back and then turned around to look at Kirishima. You think that dude was one of creatures from this forest or something? Maybe some kind of guardian ghost? Eijiro thought about all information he had about him and I wouldn't be surprised, he murmured, deep in thought while girls slowly started walking towards her friends. He quickly followed. It wasn't long before they were within group's reach and Mina launched herself into making sure he knew everyone. She introduced him as her bro who, like her, barely escaped being devoured alive by this wood's beasts. Most of the bunch was rather skeptical towards her story. Sure, they looked more into it when Kirishima agreed that everything she said had really happened but it was still hard for them to believe that something like wendigo or skinwalker existed. Even the existence of mysterious savior was a huge question mark in their books. Or more. Eijiro and Ishido finally learned their nearly eaten alive bro name. They also learned that they don't live that far away from each other. Perhaps Brunette lost a pretty big group of friends this day, but was their friendship worth anything if they left him behind so easily? Instead, he had great pal that would definitely not do this to him. What more, they shared this amazingly strong bond of, we survived, though barely and nearly as powerful, we both know about the existence of mysterious boy from forest that saves asses of idiots like us. Eijiro really hoped that he would be able to meet hooded stranger again, though preferably in less intense situation. Hugging him without previously running away from human-eating monster in the dead of night sounded great. Not being left behind to fend for himself against some terrible beast also sounded like future he would love to have. He can say a lot of things about this camping trip, but not that it was boring. Do you need anything, boys? Inko asked, entering the salon and, help me. Izuku whined while woman hid her mouth behind hand, trying not to laugh. Pugo, in his wolf form, was dragging Midoriya across the floor, his fangs firmly planted in the hood of his blouse. Green-haired boy quietly resigned himself to his fate and didn't even try fighting anymore, instead looking at his mother with wide eyes begging for rescue. Could make sure that he finally gets some sleep. Blonde wolf growled quietly, acknowledging her words. Mom, Izuku said in extremely betrayed tone. Shouldn't have spent half night strolling through the forest. Bags under your eyes puts Onyx to shame. It's not that bad, the boy protested, vanishing behind doors of his room. As you can see, I and Katsuki disagree, woman yelled after him. She completely ignored sound of wolf trying to put her stubborn son to bed and instead opted for focusing on placing all cookies on tray. With love and fairy, not fairy. dust. When she entered her son's room and left snacks on desk, she decided to aid Bakugo in his mission of making Izuku rest. So, she did the same thing as Werewolf and used her own weight to hold him down. Really, Mom? Am I a sandwich to you? He murmured from his doubly crushed belly. Katsuki raised his head and sent him the most, "It's your own fault," look that wolf expression was capable of delivering. "You're more like bread." "Sandwich is what we make together," woman answered with huge smile. "I feel more like mashed potatoes right now," he grunted back. After a moment of silence he sighed deeply, or as deeply as he could with crushing weight of person and enormous wolf on him. "Fine. You've won. I'll take nap, but can you get off me? I can't feel my spleen anymore." Two of them very slowly, most likely deliberately, let him go, and they sent each other knowing looks. Then Katsuki changed back into his human form, and they high-fived. "Can you leave so I can change into some pajamas?" Bakugo took cookies and seamed himself out. Inko wasn't far behind, and it just so happened that they both ended in kitchen. "So, has he told you about his misadventure with Wendigo and Skinwalker already?" Inko inquired. "Yep. I have no fucking idea why this nerd tries so hard to save asses of people he doesn't even know. It isn't his damn fault if some human dies from time to time. It happens. Sometimes I regret that I helped him with those observational spells. Not only would he act upon much fewer attacks but also cowered less ground," woman answered with sigh. "It's shocking that he didn't get his identity revealed yet with the amount of people he helps," were Blonde's words accompanied by rolling eyes and biting off Cookie's head. "It was first one on the long list of casualties. Even if it happened, he knows trick or two with hypnosis, so he should be fine." Nerd and useful spells? Finally. I thought I wouldn't live long enough to see the day," Bakugo stated with quiet growl of irritation. "Patience, Katsuki. Magic is a vast domain and in our case especially complicated. Aren't you the strongest type of witches?" he asked with furrowed brows. "Indeed we are, and that's why Izuku needs time. Mastering something so powerful isn't matter of night or two. I needed decades to refine my skills." "Who would want to wait that long? It seems witches are strange. Strong but fucking bizarre," was Bakugo's final conclusion before he got up. "I'm going home. Relay something to that old hag? Noni though. You can tell her to visit me more. Same shit as always. Oh, and Katsuki." He stopped in his pursuit of front doors with slight growl of irritation. "What?" he asked, glancing over at woman whose face was occupied with small, mischievous smile. "Hide your tail before you leave, dear." Bakugo became as red as tomato and with boisterous, "I fucking know," rushed outside, beforehand correcting stupid and obvious error in his detransformation. How could he be so blind and not notice it on his own? Meanwhile, Inko shook her head but more in amusement than disapproval. "Those young werewolves. Mirio Togata has never been a scaredy cat. He was always brave and confident. He was a courageous young man ready to become the best hero this world has ever seen. But right now he would really like to be somewhere else. Anywhere really. To me, something is in salon," he said quietly, hiding behind his friend. Seeing as they both got into UA, and they have known each other for years, they decided to live together. It was a splendid idea seeing as Togata just witnessed something small. Few small somethings? Slipping through shadows in one of their rooms. "What?" Amajiki asked, taking step forward but Blonde pulled him back. "Don't go there. We don't know what it is." Mirio protested instantly. "Come on, I'm sure whatever it is you can defeat I." He stopped mortified as creatures finally showed themselves, coming from the darkest corner of the room. There was a lot of them and Tamaki had no idea that there will be a point in his life when he will be so utterly terrified of dwarfs. Yet here he is, dumbfounded and paralyzed with fear, looking with huge eyes at those small beasts. They looked like tiny humans and wouldn't even be scary, if it wasn't for their sharp teeth that none predator he has ever seen would be able to match. Their fangs were extremely pointed and seemed fully capable of biting off bones within seconds, and minimal effort. What is it?" slipped out of his parted in shock lips while one of the creatures started walking towards them with low growl. Its pace was slow, but with every step it got more confident and sure of its victory. The rest followed its leader. Gnomes. I thought they were only legends. Mirio answered, holding his friend in terrified, chokingly strong embrace. What should we do? Run. While two of them started panicking, creatures suddenly stopped. Moment later, loud knock reverberated through now eerily quiet house. Then the front doors opened. Sorry for coming unannounced, but, stranger started but halted his sentence when he noticed situation before him. Mirio had no idea what this strange, hooded boy was doing here, but he hoped dearly that those small monsters will retreat since there is one human more. Maybe they don't have advantage in numbers, but they are taller. Much, much taller. And most likely stronger. Nope. Those tiny beasts didn't even flinch. Instead, their whole colony turned in the direction of newcomer who, unlike two inhabitants of home, was alone and bared their fangs at him. Togata opened his mouth, ready to tell him to run away or that according to legends gnomes change into stones under the influence of sun, but he was too late. Hooded boy beat him to talking and was the one who interrupted silence. What more, his words and tone dumbfounded him. What do you think you're doing? He asked, and he sure as hell didn't sound amused. He was serious, calm, and his irritation nearly bled into his voice. He crossed his arms and looked at group of creatures with such a fierce glare that those inhuman entities stopped dead in their tracks for a moment. And then one of them made few growl-like sounds. It isn't your house. Maybe previous inhabitants let you stay here, but now this place has new owners, and if you want to keep on living here you should talk with them instead of trying to intimidate them, boy answered curtly. Is he? Tamaki asked quietly, looking at equally dumbfounded Mirio. Scolding them? Blonde finished question, wondering who exactly this hooded boy is. Two of them jumped when the creature on the front rushed forward, baring its fangs, ready to pounce at stranger whose reaction was crouching down. His eyes were now on height of entity which backed down at last second with hiss. You're not going to achieve anything acting like this. I will throw you outside and that's it, were boy's stern words, and sure, Tamaki couldn't see whole expression of stranger, but he was pretty sure that it showed ultimate, you start cooperating or I'm throwing computer through window, young man. Gnome on the front growled something and then his arms shot up in the gesture of irritation and mute, so what I'm supposed to do? I don't care if you've lived here decade, 2 or even 3. It's human house. For a moment everyone was silent while stranger stamped his feet rhythmically on the ground with irritation, seemingly waiting for something. After a while and loud snort from leader Gnome, whole group turned toward them, but they were different. Expressions lost their predatory animosity, teeth lacked their sharpness and looked pretty human. Now they looked like dwarfs from Storied for Children. Minus pointy hats. We apologize deeply for our prior behavior. We were scared because we have lived here for years and if threw us out we would most likely got killed by the first rays of sun, the gnome on the front explained, and Brunette wasn't even embarrassed about his jaw figuratively hitting floor. Well, oh, I understand where you are coming from. You should have started with it. You gave us quite the scare back there. Mirio spoke, suddenly getting back all his confidence. Small, bloodthirsty monsters from nowhere were terrifying. Dwarfs scared of death? It's a completely different matter. Also, if someone needs help, Togata isn't the one to turn them down. He would never do that. After all, he decided a long time ago what kind of hero he'll be. He's going to become Lemillion, and he won't rest until he saves at least 1,000,000 POP creatures. So you're not going to throw us out? Gnome on the front asked untruthfully and with a rather big surprise. How could we leave you for certain death? We're heroes in training. Mirio stated energetically, putting arm on Takami's shoulder. Amajiki still was scared, but now for a different reason. He was terrified of the sheer number of living beings occupying his salon. Ignoring mysterious stranger, there was at least a dozen of dwarfs. Triple A. Why isn't his anxiety limited only to humans? Oh, Gnome murmured and then bowed deeply before continuing. If that's the case, I would like to offer my sincerest apologies, from the deepest crevices of my heart, for our initial reaction. We'll do everything we can to repay you not only for your endless kindness but also our awful initial behavior. Rest of dwarfs made quiet sounds of agreement. No need for that. I believe that it was a rather stressing situation for you too. Mirio answered immediately, deciding that every occasion to comfort distressed civilians is a good occasion. Even if those civilians are creatures which according to every law of common sense shouldn't even exist. It went surprisingly smoothly, hooded figure noticed, a bit astonished at Blonde's endlessly positive reaction to situation. It made all the heads turn toward him. He was holding notepad and writing something. Amajiki and Togata had no idea where did you took it fro. He has bag with him. I suppose I can take my leave then. Despite his words he didn't move toward exit, instead noting something even faster. So, you've come here just to help us with those creatures? Amajiki asked because as much as he was terrified of strangers, he was even more scared of hooded figure not coming. He didn't want to be devoured by gnomes because of something as small as simple miscommunication. He really didn't like idea of being eaten alive, okay? Actually, so we owe you our deepest gratitude. How did you know we needed help? Blonde added to conversation, as enthusiastic as ever. Let's just say that I have worryingly extensive knowledge about creatures that are terrorizing those areas. Oh, you're a hero? You look a bit young, but who am I to judge? Mirio asked lightly. No. How to put it? I use my free time to help people deal with inhuman creatures like those here? The ones that pro-heroes more often than not doesn't even know exists? Yeah, something like that. So you're paranormal hero. Whoa. Togata yelled with even more joy than before. Tamaki is pretty sure that stranger blushed, but to be frank, he wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Mirio's enthusiasm can be a bit intensive and unexpected. It could be even a bit intimidating at times. What are you writing? Amajiki added shyly because his thoughts gave him a feeling of solidarity with stranger, which consequently made him a bit braver than he normally was. While he's at it, he also would like to have some kind of hood in his hero costume. Who knows, maybe this boy is also shy. Wow, it was surprisingly comforting to think that someone who so bravely stepped into their house and saved them from bloodthirsty gnomes, meanwhile changing them into friendly dwarfs, could have something in common with him. Few facts and rules that can be obvious to them and a little less clear to you. Of course, you can ask them about anything you're not sure about anytime, but it's always better to have everything written down. Especially since internet sources can be misleading, boy answered, for a moment stopping scribbling, and then he resumed it with new vigor. After few last touches he tore page off and walked towards two to give it to them. Mirio instantly took gift while Tamaki was carefully observing gnomes who had kept respectful distance from stranger. Thank you. I don't know what would we do without you, Togata said before his eyes landed on neatly, though hastily, written letters. After a moment Amajiki leaned over to catch a glimpse on contents of paper. And you keep in mind that those two can have big lacks in knowledge about you, boy spoke to gnomes, and they all nodded solemnly. We'll keep it in mind. Thank you for your intervention. Without it I'm afraid that this situation would probably end rather badly, was leader answer, which was shortly followed by a deep bow. Right? Would you like some tea? Mirio started, raising his head and stopping reading, but he blinked owlishly when he didn't notice stranger. Was he already gone? Oh, I've just heard him. Amajiki looked around and gulped quietly, looking warily at bunch of dwarfs. They won't come back to their scary, bloodthirsty ways just because hooded hero disappeared, right? So, wanna decide who is going to do which chore? Tamaki looked incredulously at dwarfs screaming and yelling over each, choosing between washing, cleaning, vacuuming, a lot of things. Then he turned to look at Mirio, who joined them with loud, "You shouldn't do everything. Leave something for us." Amajiki needed nap. Or better, to wake up from what just happened. Yuga wasn't very popular. Even though his quirk was pretty easy to show off and shiny, well, shooting laser beams from navel wasn't too useful in everyday life. Also, unlike most of his classmates, he could not use his power without cutting in half closest tree/wall/bench/human. And everyone would rather survive than get cut in half, thank you very much. That's why when a group of his classmates asked him to hang out with them in haunted house he joined them. He was scared, but he was hungry for human interactions and being part of something. Anything as long as it was more friendly than not. And so, he took deep breath, gathered all the courage he possessed and went with them. They left him behind. Laughing and yelling. Later, they most likely tried to scare him, but on their way back they made each other laugh. Taking pretty much all of their spooky scary credibility, they walked away, closing doors just before his face. When he opened them they were already gone, and he was alone on the old staircase looking at endless darkness. Stared right back. He listened in shocked terror which immobilized him as their voices grew louder and louder until they completely disappeared. And was it a creak? Is there something above him? When he was with them he could do this, but now, on his own? He crawled behind first wardrobe he had found and curled up into miserable ball of pain. He hugged his head to his knees, crying quietly. Not just because he felt betrayed. He also was terrified out of his mind. He's alone in this scary, dark house. What if someone finds and hurts him? What if some kind of murderer will come here and kill him? What if some kind of ghost or demon hears him and decides to possess him? He doesn't want to lose his body. Hello? Is everything all right? I heard crying. Yuga became completely still, scared of unfamiliar voice, but after few seconds he relaxed a bit. He didn't know who it was, but he sounded genuine. As if he really was worried. Unlike ghost, demon or psychopathic killer on the loose. Here, Yuga sniffled out quietly, though he was pretty sure that stranger didn't hear him. He was mistaken. Moment later there was someone's figure leaning over him. Aoyama flinched, disturbed by the fact that person was hidden beneath hood. It hid his hair and casted an ominous shadow over his eyes. But he instantly felt much better when stranger smiled. It was a really warm and friendly gesture. Someone who would want to hurt him surely wouldn't be capable of such a nice expression, especially with only half of face visible. Or at least so he hoped. Are you okay? What happened? He asked, holding out his hand for him to take. Blonde instantly took it and let himself be helped to his feet. Friends wanted to go to the haunted house and invited me, so I joined them. They left me here, he explained quietly, wiping away his tears but still crying a bit. I was scared that looking for exit I will stumble upon some ghost, and I know it's stupid, but I didn't know what to do, and it's so dark and scary here. Oh, don't worry, I understand. I'll help you get out safely, okay? Yuga nodded stiffly, and when stranger took first towards exit he instantly caught his hand, looking away in embarrassment. He didn't want to be alone again. He wasn't sure if he would able to take it. And so he preferred to be laughed at for behaving like a lost child, but he wasn't going to risk it. He wasn't going to be left behind one again. Stranger, though, didn't react negatively. To be frank, he didn't at all. No comment left his lips, and instead he gently directed them both to the main doors. Yuga absent-mindedly noted only outside features of hooded figure he could gather, freckles and smooth hands. I'm pretty sure that all ghosts moved out few weeks ago, boy commented offhandedly, and Aoyama didn't jump out of his skin from surprise and fright only thanks to his quiet, gentle tone. And where did they go? He asked with childish curiosity, grateful to his companion for ending silence that hung unnervingly in the air. To the other side, of course, was answer, shortly followed by a friendly laughter which Yuga joined, though rather nervously. Meanwhile, Midoriya was congratulating himself on the fact that he had already taken care of this house a while ago. Ghosts that resided here weren't particularly aggressive but could be territorial. Thanks to all his stars that he didn't have that much work with helping them come to terms with their lives being irreversibly over. They let themselves be helped and finally were free. If you don't mind me asking, what are you doing here? You were also with friends? You've come alone, or? Yuga asked shyly. I know. I've seen some whippersnappers leaving this house with a rather suspicious laughter. I decided to check if they didn't try summoning demons or something. In Aoyama's eyes his words were a joke. In his own? Not really. I'm really happy you did it. Otherwise, I'm not sure what I would do. Conversation ended when two of them came face to face with doors and then finally found themselves outside. They could take deep breath of fresh air, and there was not much more to do than simply leave house behind. Stranger untangled his fingers from surprisingly strong hold of Yuga only when they descended the stairs and ended on the sidewalk. Once again, thank you, Monami. It was a really awful situation for me, Aoyama stated, laughing nervously and trying to act tough. Or at least self-confident. No problem. I'm happy I could help. Midoriya answered with smile and then turned around, ready to leave. Or vanish. Depends on whatever he gets opportunity to do so or not. W8. Izuka stopped, looking back at Blonde who nervously twiddled with his fingers. You look like a nice person and… Can I be your friend? Aoyama blurted out after a pretty long battle with himself, looking away. I would love to, but you see, Midoriya started but stopped with deep sigh, seeing Blonde's crestfallen expression. He looked like his heart just shattered into a million tiny pieces. But I want to stay anonymous, but if you give me your email we can be friends online. Suddenly Yuga's head jerked up, and he rushed toward him. Within seconds, he was holding both his hand in powerful grip of infinite happiness. Saker Blue. Really? But I mean, do you have something to write on? I don't want you to forget it and… Yuga stopped when Midoriya freed one of his hands and took out notepad from his bag. Seconds later he offered him it with pen, which Blonde took with extreme joy. Not long after, one of Page's corner was anointed with amazingly decorative script. Éclat? Midoriya asked, reading, more like trying really strange words. It's in French. It means shining soul. Yuga answered with slight blush, giving notepad back to its owner. Oh, sounds interesting. Midoriya praised with huge smile. And if you want to, you can keep this pen. As memento of sorts? Really? Bon merci, Blonde answered, and the way he hugged this small, insignificant item assured Izuku that this was the right thing to say and do. So, write to you soon, Stranger said, and with final wave of hand started walking towards his destination. Yuga watched his back with huge smile, holding pen close to his heart in strong grip. It assured him that it really happened. Even when the nice boy disappeared behind the corner. From that point on, Aoyama wanted to be a hero. He wanted to help and support, to chase away fear as hooded figure did for him. Shinso Hitoshi knew who he wanted to be even before the world began its rant of how quirks like his are evil, wrong, and whatnot. He wasn't going to give up though, quite the contrary actually. Their words made his determination stronger. He wanted to show them that power isn't everything and the ability you are born with doesn't decide your fate. You do. That's why when he noticed a crying girl in otherwise deserted playground, he decided to come closer and check what had happened. True that he wasn't the mastermind of human interactions, but, well, it's hero's job to help when something is wrong, right? It was going fine. It turned out that she lives near, though she didn't tell him where exactly, not that he was surprised. He's a stranger to her after all, and she decided to visit this playground. She cried because she lacked company. And she also fell from swing and had scraped knees. What a poor little soul. Shinso talked with her for a while, and she calmed down. But who would have thought? Such a surprise that after all those years of being terrible with children he suddenly isn't. Strange things happened when he was ready to leave. Can you give me your name? She asked, looking at him with her huge, inhumanly golden eyes. Sure? Shinso Hitoshi, he answered, and it didn't even take a minute for him to realize that something was wrong. In first few seconds when she happily clapped her hands, everything was all right. But suddenly her smile was bigger. It was unnaturally huge, outstretched nearly from ear to ear. And her amber eyes shone maliciously. You gave your name to me, so you're mine. Forever, she told him, and for some reason it made him shiver slightly. It doesn't work like that. He tried to deny her words, but she ignored him. Come, she commanded, and he listened. He didn't want to. He was going to turn around and walk far away as quickly as humanly possible without running, because suddenly he knew with every fiber of his being that something is really, really wrong. But he didn't have any control over his body. In his moment of terror there was this awful though that flashed through his mind. Is this how his quirk feels like to other people? Girl led him to the forest, and when first branches broke under his feet his horror reached its peak. He had to do something and do it fast. He had no idea what was going on, and he didn't even want to know, to be frank. He just wanted to go back home. You humans are so naive, accosted. Who exactly is she? Is she even a human? Seeing what she just said? Most likely no. What are you? Slipped out of his lips, and he was surprised that he could talk. How is it that he can't control his body but can ask questions? What exactly is her power? If you weren't such an ignorant you'd already knew. Your name gives me power over you, so what else can I be? She answered with laugh, and then she suddenly stopped dead in her tracks. So did his body. Her expression changed from that face-splitting grin into discontent. She hissed and Shinso looked with shock as her body grew. Within seconds, she wasn't this little girl with scraped knees he tried to console anymore. Instead, the creature standing before him was a slim woman with hair as golden as her eyes. But the most unnerving part were those long, dragonfly-like wings shining in all colors of rainbow every time sun touched their surface. She didn't look like an entity from this world. She looked otherworldly, and that made panic that was already swirling inside of him grow even more powerful. Now, he was definitely terrified out of his mind. Who dares to interrupt my fun? She asked what seemed to be nothing with irritation, and her pupil became predatory. Vertical and thin like pinpricks. Shinso looked to the side. Now he can do that too, huh? At the figure that arrived. Pretty much from nowhere. He came through bushes? From behind the tree? How came they haven't noticed him sooner? Kidnapping people shouldn't be pastime activity, Newcomer said with deep sigh. It seems Stranger is here to rescue him. Thanks to all his lucky stars. Now all he has left to do is wait. And hope that his to-be savior doesn't die while trying to save him from unknown but most likely terrible fate. And who are you to say that? She asked, and panic came back full. With doubled force when she covered the distance separating her from hooded person in seconds. Entity wrinkled its nose as if she was trying to smell answer to her question, and then her face suddenly brightened up. Ah, I get it now. So what brings you here, to me? Do you have anything you could offer me for this lad? Shinso didn't feel better with her sudden change of mood at all. The fact that she wasn't furious and ready to mutilate something didn't mean she wasn't going to do it in next few minutes. He also found it rather uncomfortable that she was talking about his life as if it was something that could be easily bought. I think so, hooded figure answered, and Hitoshi was ready to sigh with relief. Stranger seemed so calm and collected that there was no way he didn't know what he was doing, right? Two of them looked at Newcomer with rapid attention as he rummaged through his bag. Finally, he took out file which golden-haired creature instantly wrested from his hand and smelled it. It made her face split in the same ear-to-ear smile as when she was trying to lead him into unknown. That's good, he supposes? Tempting, promising even, but is it enough? You definitely could offer me more for his name. She spoke, though the way she was holding file clearly stated that she wasn't going to give it back. Her eyes screamed, "It's mine." A hummed boy, visibly deep in thought. After a while he reached for his bag, which from he took small writing pad and pen. Could you stay still for a moment? Her eyes gleamed with content, and after giving a curt nod she listened to his request. Shinso fixed his eyes on her nearly statue-like silhouette and then on fast but full of practiced precision movements of the pen. After over a dozen of minutes that could be as well hours for him, Stranger stopped. He put down his writing instrument and then torn out page from his pad. He gave it to golden-haired woman who happily accepted object. I like it, she nearly purred and then reached out her arm. I can accept this arrangement. They shook hands and Shinso flinched. Her smile. She seemed ready to devour someone's soul. Shinso Hitoshi. I give this name to you, she said in grave serious tone. I hand you this magical concoction and portrait, he answered in equally solemn voice. Then he let go of her palm. She turned around, ready to go, but before her silhouette disappeared behind the closest bushes she looked back one more time. Tell Inko to visit me. I haven't seen her in decades. They could still hear her maniacal laughter, even as she completely vanished, hopefully forever, from their views. How do you feel? A hooded person asked gently, directioning his attention towards him, and Shinso blinked in surprise. Did her words make no impact on him at all? From what he gathered, names had huge value and could be used pretty much as weapons by her, so this Inko person could be in big trouble. Traumatized but unharmed, he answered in his typical tired-of-life tone. Would you like some tea? Hitoshi knew that he shouldn't trust strangers. especially those suspiciously hooded in the middle of forest, who just confronted, without any hesitation, creature that most likely is going to show its not-so-ugly face in his nightmares. The thing is that at that very moment he was more existentially tired than even before in his whole life. And that's a pretty grand achievement. So he decided fuck it and said yes. Shinso wasn't exactly sure how he ended up with hooded stranger, sitting in city's park and drinking from his thermos some kind of warm beverage, but he was absolutely positive that this happened according to his own, even if very tired, will. Don't worry about it too much. It could have happened to anyone, his savior assured him. I think that most people would realize the danger of someone asking you, can you give me your name, instead of typical, what's your name? He answered with self-irritation. What even was that thing? Fairy, stranger said, and Hitoshi nodded in acknowledge, getting ready to read about it when he gets back home. If you wanted to know for future reference, it's best to introduce yourself with you can call me, or you may address me as. Those are the safest options. I am and my name isn't foolproof. Not all creatures of her kind can use it, but some have their ways. Thanks. Shinso murmured and stiffly bowed his head in gratitude, hugging thermos. For advice and for saving my life from this thing? No problem, stranger answered with smile that literally blinded Hitoshi for a moment. How can anyone be so warm and trustworthy when half of their face is hidden behind hood? Is it even allowed? By the way, if now you have my name, does it mean? Don't worry about it. It was more about taking it from her than getting it for myself, he assured instantly and then hesitated for a moment. I see that you have problems with sleep. If you want, I have a tea that would be great for that. Wow. It's the nicest attempt of using chloroform I've ever seen. What? And no, that's not what Stranger started with mix of indignation and mortification but stopped immediately when Shinso began to laugh. That was a joke. Hitoshi nodded and hooded figure joined his cackle, though with much more subtlety. Shinso took a moment to wonder how did this naive cinnamon roll survived in this brutal world for so long. So, what kind of tea you want to recommend me? I would tell you, but why, since you've already guessed? Purple-haired boy nearly choked on his sip from thermos, and when he was sure he wouldn't die, he turned around to look at his companion with huge grin. You learn fast, he noticed, and Midoriya smiled back at him. Once again Shinso nearly got blinded by this pure, precious, wholesome expression. It shouldn't be legal. It's too good for this world. Anyway, here you go, was Izuku's reply, which was shortly followed by him taking sack full of something from his bag and giving it to Hitoshi. He took it graciously and decided to sniff it as he was curious about how it smelt like. The answer to his unasked question was extremely herbal. I can tell you what is in it, but I'm pretty sure you wouldn't know half of those plants. If you're going to use Latin names, then don't. Just don't. Shinso said, and then gave him back his thermos. His next course of action was nervously moving sack from one hand to another. Are you sure you want to give it to me? It's not like I'm fainting from the lack of sleep or something. That's not a problem at all. Really. Also, you deserve something nice after today's adventure. Trauma? Traumatic adventure? For a moment they were silent. Thanks. Once again. For everything. Shinso murmured a bit sheepishly, nervously scratching his neck. I don't remember last time someone was so nice to me. What? Why? Hitoshi was used to staying away from others, closed off in fear of being hurt. But he was also used to not having anyone he could tell about his sad excuse of life. People give me a wide berth because they think that my quirk is villainous. That's cruel. You don't even know what my power is. You can steal souls, and I would still think that it's unfair to judge someone on this base alone. Shinso blinked, surprised by this answer. Was really nice. I think I'm going to use my yearly limit of thanking on you. Hitoshi murmured with small smile and then got up. So, I think I should head back home. It was nice to meet you, and if you're somewhere close, bored, and just so happen to see me, He stopped mid-sentence with quiet looking with complete lack of understanding at a small piece of paper being held inches from his eyes. My email. If you want, you can write to me. We can be besties online or something, stranger explained, and Shinso immediately took item. Thanks. Means a lot, he murmured, nervously shuffling his feet. Hey, leave some of your gratitude for others. I would feel bad if you've used up your whole thank you limit on me and everyone else would end up getting only apologies. Hitoshi laughed quietly, turning around for a moment. Not that big of loss for world, he stated, and then decided to look at stranger to bid his final farewells. He blinked and then rubbed his eyes. Bench was empty. He looked at his hands and furrowed his eyebrows, looking at sack of tea and piece of paper. Was his new friend's quirk teleportation or something? Shinso shrugged and headed back home, where it didn't take him long to take a seat before his computer with hot beverage positioned near his left hand. If he had spent half of an hour leaning over keyboard and looking for right words, well, this secret will be safe with him. He'll sure as hell take it to the grave, or at least to bed. Both sounds tempting. It's me, dude you saved from? Fairy? Frairy? Fairy? That fairy-ish demon. Ugh, I hope I got right email. By the way, I thought you were joking with this whole chloroform release, but it really packs a punch. I'm pretty sure I'm going to faint any time now. Tell me if I overstep any boundaries of good manners. I'm not very good with human interactions. Both in and direct ones. With best regard, or sing. The one whom has used his yearly limit of thank yous on you. Boy yawned and looked at his half-empty mug, wondering if chloroform isn't actually a plant. If it is, there is a chance that closer or further family of it was in this herbal mix. Not that he was complaining, he would truly appreciate good night's sleep. To be frank, he was ready to have nap right here right now with keyboard as pillow. He closed his eyes for a moment and he woke up hour later. Shinso wondered what the hell is in this tea. Meanwhile, making himself more. Mom, why some fairy knows your name and wanted me to relay to you to visit her? Could you be more specific? Inko asked, looking up from the plate she was drying up. She wasn't sure if she was more amused or heartbroken with how tired of life and overworked her son looked. Fairy? Golden hair and eyes? Tries to kidnap random people to her world as a meaning of entertainment. Ah yes, Anastasia. It's been such a long time since I've seen her, woman said with huge smile, which toned down a bit rather quickly. I hope she didn't cause you too much trouble. No, I got along with her pretty easily. Too easily, to be frank. So, how do you know her? And why do I have a feeling that you're good friends with her? We went to school together. Izuku choked on his own saliva. What? You may not know, but your mom used to be quite a globetrotter. More like world's trotter, but no matter. I've spent some time in fairy realm. It's a really specific place. And now, tell me, what did you get her for name of this poor mortal who was unlucky enough to stumble upon her? She answered with smile. You remember this potion I've been working on for weeks? The one that changes scent depending on who smells it? Yes. Anastasia would definitely be interested in it. But I doubt that was enough for her. So, portrait. Fairies are super egocentric. Inko laughed so hard there were some tears streaming down her face. Oh, Izuku, have I told you that you're my favorite son already? I'm your only son. Inko wiped droplets of happiness from her face and left now dry plate in cupboard. Oh my dear, precious child. Anastasia loves art. Do you know what it means? Midoriya made unidentified sound of distress, more like anguish, really, and decided to take swan dive into sofa. Exactly, woman confirmed. Frequent visits and lots of deals. Maybe she'll decide that my style isn't worth her time? Inko's laughter told him just how flimsy his hope is. Look at it in positive light, she can be a perfect supplier of gems. Fairies have their ways of obtaining those in worrying amounts, and with the speed you're giving those away. I'm sorry for not wanting to leave traumatized people without any protection. He yelled from salon, and Inko could see his arms thrown up in the gesture of not quite irritation but something close to it. Woman entered the room he was in and leaned over him to pet his mess of locks. I know. You're too kind for your own good, and that's pretty much my fault. Come on, Mom, you gave me the best genes. Oh, you're such a sweet talker, she said and booped his nose. Mom, I'm not a child. We'll talk when you're in your late hundreds. But it's, like, eternity. Don't exaggerate, even we don't live that long. For a moment none of them said anything, and Inko came back to kitchen. So? How did the human reacted at his attempted kidnapping to fairy realm? Izuku rushed to sit instead of lying and looked at woman from the backrest of sofa with huge smile. Pretty well actually. We'll be online friends. Inko shook her head with heavy sigh, but her upturned lips betrayed her fondness. He cried and yelled and begged and run and paused and nothing. Forest was quiet. Always so terrifyingly empty and endless. No matter how hard he would try to get away from it. He was sure that he had been stumbling through thick bushes for years, but in this place time was different. When he first got here he was a teenager, but right now he was smaller. His tiny noodle arms and legs made it clear to him that he couldn't be older than 5, even though he knew that not so long ago he was 12. He was steadily approaching 13 years old threshold, so why? Why? What is wrong with this place? Boy, child. Monoma gave up. He heavily fell to the ground, hugging his face to his knees and having support only in tree behind him. At this rate, will there be anything left of him? He'll be revoked back to the point when he didn't exist, and he'll die. And he doesn't want it. Not now. Why at this moment of his life? He has so much to do and achieve. He must show to the world that his quirk isn't weak, and he himself is strong. He heard crunch of broken branch, and he instantly got up, rushing towards cause of the sound. Neito didn't care for how pathetic he looked or behaved. Now survival was the most important matter. Everything that mattered was getting out of this dreadful, time-reversing forest and finding way back home. He launched himself at person who lost balance for a moment but quickly regained it. Boy caught handful of stranger's pants and grasped it tightly, meanwhile hugging unknown figure as if life depended on it. Who knows? Maybe it did? He must make sure that this figure won't disappear. He's seen this chance before and never could grasp it. There was silhouette sneaking between trees. The one he chased and yelled for it to stop. To talk to him. To interact with him in any way. But it didn't. It vanished before he could even get a good look at it. It ignored his begs and laughed at his pathetic attempts in catching it. His tears died down a little on intensity when person before him leaned over and scooped him up. Monoma instantly snuggled into them and hid his head in their shoulder. He was grateful for stranger's hood. He felt pathetic enough as it is. Even without looking in the eyes of his savior while getting snot, effect of his excessive weeping, all over him he felt rather undignified. Everything's okay now. I'll get you out of here, stranger said gently, and Blonde could feel new tears forcing their way towards his eyes. This time though, he was going to cry from relief. This world, this forest, it changed me into a child and I don't want to be one. I don't want to be a child again. Shoo, calm down, everything's will go back to normal the moment we leave this place. Neito nodded into stranger's shoulder and then put all his strength into stopping incoming tears. Ooh, you're leaving so soon? Monoma raised his head quickly and his eyes instantly localized source of the sound. It was her. The silhouette from before. The one sneaking around, laughing at his pain. He remembered. He felt like it was years ago, but it was her. It was her fault. He was here because of this thing. Woman had vixen features and animalish ears. Behind her there were 6 tails, coiling around her in amusement. Her dark hair drifted on her shoulders and back like a calm but tremendous waterfall. Eyes were crimson red and had vertical pupil but didn't seem to hold any aggression. You shouldn't stress people like this just because you're bored, stranger's voice reprimanded, and Monoma nearly sighed in relief. If hooded figure isn't scared, then everything will, or already is, be alright, right? Oh come on. I took him on the ride of his life. How many of those poor little creatures can say that they were in my very own dimension? And how many of them went insane? Neito could feel goosebumps on his skin. You're overreacting. Everyone always comes back safe and sound. I mean, in physical sense at least. Really, it's not my fault how fragile they are. I always send them back with no injuries whatsoever. It's not my fault that some just take time change badly. Midoriya sighed deeply. It's not even that kitsuns, Najitsun in this case, are particularly evil creatures. Just, their morality is a rather lacking field. They can learn it from humans, but our race doesn't always give the best example. What more if entities of her kind spent most of their time in their own small worlds? They had their own, more often than not impossibly tangled, beliefs. Just get us back to our world. You could do it yourself, but since you're asking so nicely, she answered with smile that would be pleasant if it wasn't for sardonic glint in her eye. Monoma got put down, but before he could protest he felt strange. World seemed to swirl, and he suddenly hadn't those childish, noodle-like arms and legs. He once again was a teen. He looked with shocked expression at stranger and then at fox. Animal made sound worryingly similar to giggle. If I didn't feel so lonely, maybe I wouldn't have to make companions of random people. So, what do you say, dear? Maybe you'd like to visit me from time to time? From time to time? Ha! Time is such a funny concept. Monoma blinked once and then twice. After what he was put through, talking fox shouldn't surprise him anymore, but it was a rather strange sight nonetheless. I can even bring some paints for you, but please, leave ordinary mortals alone. Neito's speechless gaze drifted to hooded stranger who seemed completely unimpressed with the madness they were witnessing. Oh, I like this idea. I'll be waiting, answered creature, and then she disappeared. Completely new world opened its gate before her, the one Monoma unfortunately knew from experience, and its rippling surface vanished in the instant. Tip of her tail disappeared behind it. W slipped out of dumbfounded blonde. Najitsun. Really old and really bored Najitsun. Do you want me to accompany you on your way back home? Neito was really proud of himself about what he was capable of, choking instead of yes. Please. I beg you. Would be really nice, he answered, and stranger asked about his address. Moment later Monoma was walking with hooded figure towards his house. Maybe he shouldn't have told him where he lived so easily, but he trusted him. He definitely felt too naive and trustful when it came to him, but how could he not after what happened? So, you're kind of like Hero, but the one who deals with strange creatures? He asked, looking with not very well hidden interest at the stranger. Yeah, something like this. How often do you meet things of this strange fox kind? Stranger sighed heavily. At least once a week. Monoma's eyes shined with newfound admiration, and if anyone asked about it he would definitely deny it. Or excuse himself with the fact that few minutes ago he was a child and there must be some side effects still present on him. And you always know what to do? How to reach an agreement with them? Sometimes. More often than not, talking isn't enough. In this exact instant Monoma knew who his favorite hero is going to be. Not only did he save him, but seeing as he had never heard about him before, world probably had no idea about his existence. He saved people from shadows and didn't even want fame. Even though he's so awesome. Can you tell me some stories? The rest of the way Neito spent listening to the calming voice of stranger, taking in every single detail of his numerous encounters. He learned about existence of sirens, gnomes, gargoyles, imps, vampires, werewolves, and many, many more. And no matter how crazy stories he was told were or how unnatural creatures were described, Monoma believed in everything. How could he not after what happened to him? What more, with every tale he was more and more sure that yes, this is his favorite hero. Idol. And you're supposed to trust those you look up to. Always and about everything. When they arrived at his place, Neito was a rather unhappy soul. Will I meet you ever again? He tried to sound nonchalant, but he might have not succeeded. But only by a little margin. Why not? Stranger answered before holding out something to him. Monoma took item from his hand, looking at it with easily noticeable interest. It was a green agate on the twine of the similar color. It seemed to be a bracelet of some kind. It's for me? Monoma asked, surprised, gently holding object and subconsciously bringing it closer to his heart. Yeah, it's a protection against malicious ghosts. I don't think that Noctison from before will try to bother you again, but better to be safe than sorry. Thank you, Neito whispered, feeling strangely touched by such a small, theoretically unimportant gesture from a total stranger. His gaze drifted towards stone he was still holding close to his heart, to the calm color of green, and then he looked up and... Where did the hooded figure go? After a moment of dumbfounded staring at air, he headed towards front gates of his home. Definitely his favorite hero. Aizawa was really tired. He has been chasing villain for at least half an hour, and when he finally caught him, they were in the forest in the middle of nowhere. Wonderful. Just great. It most definitely was climax of what he ever aspired to get to in life. What could beat nice little walk in bushland accompanied by the dark night sky and unconscious criminal? Moon is sure as hell his most loyal friend. Okay, maybe second counting present Mike. It's definitely the quietest one though. But oh well, what else can he do? His only option is to start walking towards city. After all, if he gives villain to the hands of justice fast enough, he might even get a chance to sleep through 1/10 of night. Hooray. No, seriously. He really needs this hour or two of slumber. He would let himself get stabbed for 3. Maybe not. Because frankly he could rest for eternity if he just got himself killed. But the art of survival is being rather kind to him these days, so it would be a pity to get murdered just because he wanted a good night's sleep. He sighed heavily when relative silence of forest was interrupted by woman's weeping. He needed to check it, so here goes his hour or two of sleep. He really hoped that it wasn't some kind of trap because he was too tired to deal with some idiots. If he meets some delinquents, he will most likely send them into stratosphere with solid jaw punch. And if by doing so he breaks some of their bones? Well, strange things happens on patrols. After few seconds with his fast but quiet pace and bypassing decently sized bush, he could finally look at silhouette. For a moment he stopped dead in his track to rub his eyes. It didn't help as she was still there. In the middle of night. Doing her laundry. Wearing unnervingly clean, white dress and okay, everyone has freedom in dressing however they want, but it was fishy. If she didn't teleport herself here, how was it possible that such an easy to dirty color stayed so perfectly pristine? It was devoid of any stains, no soil, greenery pieces. Actually nothing at all was on her. She didn't even seem wet from being so close to river. Are you okay? He asked, coming closer. He hated interacting with civilians. If it was his cup of tea, more like coffee, he wouldn't be underground hero, but since he had stumbled upon someone, he should make sure that they are not hurt or something. Especially when the mentioned person is weeping. No, more like wailing. In such awful, heartbreaking way that even listening to it hurts. It was like all of her hopes were shattered and her world crumbled apart. As if she has lost someone more important than herself, and she couldn't move forwards. She didn't look toward him. She didn't even glance at him. Instead, grimly continuing doing her laundry and crying. Aizawa took few steps more towards her before he stopped, feeling goosebumps forming on his skin. Is it? It's impossible. It must be some kind of imitation. What was this world, the one youth uses? Cosplay? Yeah. That must be it. After all, it's impossible that this unnerving woman is holding Yamada's jacket. No matter how similar it is or how recognizable it. Shota haven't seen things like this in shops, but it's not like he's some kind of shopaholic. He barely goes out to buy some ramen or sack of coffee. Is it? Present mixed jacket? He heard near him and his scarf instantly let go of villain he was holding up to this moment to, instead, rush in the direction of new adversary. Aizawa turned his head to look at uninvited guest who jumped back, but before that he made a rather undignified squeak of surprise. He also put up his hands as to show his capitulation. Shota looked him over and decided to go back to using his scarf on unconscious villain. Sorry. I didn't mean to startle you, stated hooded figure instantly, but Aizawa had better things to talk about than listening to apologies. What are you doing here, kid? It's the middle of the night, and if I didn't have dangerous criminal to get care of, I would be already showing you police station. Aizawa doesn't play around with stupid teenagers. No matter if boy decided to go for an innocent, midnight stroll or if he was actually doing something relatively harmful like, let's say, vandalism. On what in this bushland? No matter. Underground hero had more important matters on his mind than babysitting overgrown infant. Kid? Stranger asked with indignation, which prompted Shota to send him the most glaringly skeptical look he was capable of. You're 5 feet tall. 5'3". And the difference is? If you're not old enough for your growth to recede, or if you don't have some kind of genetical sickness changing you into dwarf, then you're a child. Not even teenager. Maybe around 10 years old. I'm not a child, boy reaped with gravelly serious tone, and Aizawa mentally congratulated him on not taking the bait. He hoped that, as with height, he would correct him and so betray his real age. Maybe Shota shouldn't be investigating random child in the forest, but hey, it's always better to have more than less personal information about encountered people. Irrelevant. What are you doing here and what is it? If it's some kind of joke, Aizawa started in threatening tone but decided not to finish his sentence as to add more severity to it. Moment later he glanced at Weeping Woman since her wailing seemed really quiet all of sud. Of course. She vanished without a trace. How typical. It's Banshee and I'm here because I wanted to warn you about her, boy stated, and Aizawa was nearly impressed by how serious he sounded. If he wasn't a child he might have even believed him. In some small extent. Banshee? Brunette asked with skeptical expression and furrowed brows. Hooded figure nodded grimly. According to beliefs, she shows herself to people who are going to lose someone close to them. She usually washes clothes of the person that is going to die, weeping about it. It's a warning. It's a superstition. Aizawa answered instantly with deadpan expression. Really, kid, if you're going to play some dumb tricks with your friends, do it on someone less busy. I'm professional hero and I have more important mat. I know you're a hero, the boy interrupted him. He sounded a bit irritated now. Eraserhead. Underground hero who can erase quirks. And Banshee was washing present mixed jacket. Even if you don't believe in such things, it would be wise to stay extra vigilant in upcoming week. Warning, you got maybe your only chance to save him. He didn't like goosebumps forming on his back one bit. That's enough. You're coming with me to police station and I'll talk with your parents about stupid pranks. Aizawa decided with enough irritation to snarl, trying to catch Hooded Boy by his shoulder. Kid jumped back with surprising grace and then retreated towards forest. Death is not something to joke about, he said in tone that showed much more experience than anyone his age should possess. Then he ran away. Shota cursed under his breath and with few quick steps he leaped through bushes. Stranger disappeared behind. Of course, he wasn't there anymore. And Aizawa couldn't care less if boy's quirk was invisibility, teleportation, or if he just climbed on some random tree. He was too tired for this. He was too tired for anything, to be honest. He glanced at a still unconscious criminal he had to yet give in the hands of justice and took deep breath. He needed coffee, sleep, or both. Eventually coma. He didn't believe in such things as ghosts, phantoms, demons, or God knows what else. In the world of quirks it more often than not was some brat using his power to bring legends back to life. But when he lied down, ready to fall asleep, he could still hear this awful wailing. That's why even if he took Kid as at the very least partially crazy, he stayed especially vigilant. His transmitter was beside his bed, turned up to the maximum volume, and he himself decided to give up on wearing any kind of pajamas, or having any hope for good night rest, in this week. He was ready for action at any given time. Present Mike was extremely irritating, but he was one of very few people he cared about. Life without him definitely would be quieter, but also empty in some very important sense. They had been friends for such a long time that they were more a family now. Blonde man was like frustrating child you would threaten with adoption most of the time, but in the end you cared. A bit. A lot. Enough to put your life on the line. When on the third day he got SOS signal from Present Mike, he got up in blink of the eye and within second was behind window. He didn't even close it behind him. He was running at lightning speed because what was the chance that something would happen now? That after this whole Banshee's warning thing, Present Mike would be in such huge trouble that he would need to call for backup? Shota reached the place fast, but was it fast enough? Average person would most likely stop dead in their tracks thanks to terror of scene happening before them, but he was not such a thing. As a professional hero he has seen things, and so he didn't succumb to fear and didn't waste any time. His scarf weapon shot towards enemy without any delay. Creature looked worryingly lot like Granny but could as well be a demon. Her white hair were in disarray, clumped together with abundant amount of blood. Scarlet liquid was also streaming down in red rivulets down her chin. When she noticed intruder she exposed her soiled with life-giving crimson teeth. Fangs? Then she jumped away from attack at speed that definitely shouldn't be possible for someone looking as old as her. Present Mike was laying on the ground, unconscious and with profusely bleeding injury on his side. Yamayuba. Two heads turned in the direction of alley placed behind demonical woman. Aizawa's eyes grew wider from shock as he recognized familiar figure of hooded person he had met few days ago in the forest. The same one who warned him about true meaning hidden behind Banshee's laundry. Brunette was ready to, with quiet curse, throw himself at creature the same moment it tried attacking this stupid kid. Instead, he stopped dead in his track when the woman didn't react with any kind of hostility. She didn't bare her fang-like teeth at boy like she did towards him. What she did, though, was hunching like kind, little granny touched by helplessness of old age. What worse, she dared to smile warmly. As if she could fool anyone. As if it was possible for her to hide blood she spilled with just an expression while red liquid still hung to her face and hair. "Oh, sweetheart, help this old lady, won't you?" "My dinner was interrupted by this brute," she complained with tone perfectly tuned with what old, decrepit people used. Aizawa could feel creeps going through the back of his neck and spreading to his spine. What she said? He felt sick. There was something wrong with this woman. Very, very wrong. "Yamayuba, this isn't your area. And you shouldn't attack innocent people," the boy answered, and to Aizawa's terror took few steps closer to this dangerous woman. Thing? Despite his own fear showed a rush towards not going to let another person get hurt, but he had to jump back when her hair took form of snake which nearly bite his face off. If it wasn't for his experience honed through years of being underground hero, he would most likely get gravely injured. How impolite. "Don't interrupt us," woman croaked out, turning her head towards him for a moment. When she was sure that he wasn't going to try anything, she looked at the boy again. "What are you suggesting then, sweetheart? You aren't telling me to starve, do you?" "Of course not. I'll help you get back home and with less hurtful towards others dinner. Does it sound okay?" Woman clapped her hands together. "What a nice young man. You'd really do that for me? You remind me of my dear child. Kintaro was always such a treasure. My beloved little boy." He was frozen with shock as he watched this small boy from forest put his hand toward devilish granny. He watched as she took it, and they both departed into darkness. He didn't miss the way hooded figure nodded toward present Mike, and he most certainly hadn't problem with realizing that this is his moment to act. For a moment he shoved all his thoughts about this strange occurrence aside. He had more important matters to attend to, and all of them took form of his heavily injured friend. Aizawa used his scarf to stop bleeding, but he knew that without professional, medical help it could and most likely would end badly. And he was sure that present Mike needed it immediately. He quietly cursed, and with one hand on his friend's injury, he fished for his foe. Shit. Actually, the whole world lacked words to describe how furious he was at himself. He assumed that if something really happened, he and his hero costume would be enough to help. He didn't take into account possibility of him also needing someone's assistance. Also, he hadn't snatched his phone on the way here because he was too focused on SOS signal from present Mike getting to him as fast as humanly, or even inhumanly, possible was his only concern. He barely even glanced at where he should head to. Needing ambulance was stupidly not something he was expecting. Inhale. Exhale. It's not the end of the world. Everything will be fine. Present Mike definitely has his phone on him, so he just needs to find it and... Is it ambulance he's hearing? Aizawa froze for a moment, listening to familiar sound which was coming in his direction. Well, it's not possible. Or is it? After few more seconds he was sure. There's no mistaking it, help is coming his way. In no time vehicle parked few paces away, on the street side, and loud footsteps penetrated the quiet of the night. With those came voices asking for injured person and his position. Here, Aizawa yelled, and in the blink of eye he was watching professionals getting care of present Mike. He spent that night in hospital, but at least waiting near Blonde's bed, after getting assured few times that he had lost a bit of skin, some muscles and a lot of blood, but he'll be fully healed within month or two. He had a chance to take a nap. For the first time in a very long time his sleep was peaceful. Aizawa most likely should thank Hooded Boy for his intervention. Not only for a warning and taking demoniacal granny away, which let Aizawa stop present Mike bleeding, but also for calling ambulance. Shota hoped that this kid really was a kid and in an age he judged him to be, not the one he said in attempt to make him talk, because he would most definitely want to meet him again. Most preferably in a hero course. It would be a pity if such potential was wasted, wouldn't it? Yagi was lost. Maybe entering forest shouldn't be first thing he did after arriving at the new city, but what else was he supposed to do? He heard child crying, so he had to check it. He stepped into this terrain full of trees, ready to transform into his muscular form at any given moment to jump from behind some bushes and rescue those in need, but he didn't stumble upon anything suspicious. And he looked around. Very thoroughly. At some point crying just stopped. And everything pointed at it being nothing more than his imagination. So what to do? With heavy sigh he decided to move on. Back to the path he came here through. The one he could clearly remember. As clearly as day. And yet here he is, completely lost. First time he bypassed familiar tree he hadn't paid it much attention, but after third one he was starting to think that something wasn't quite right. He needed only 5 tries in getting out to be absolutely sure that someone had caught him in their quirk. After all, it wasn't physically possible to make so many circles while going straight. Okay, he might have taken 1 or 2 turns, but those weren't that sharp, and he was sure that he's seen familiar area. At one point he could have sworn he heard giggle. Strange, barely hearable one, sounding a bit like bells and kind of inhuman, but something, must be here. He sure as hell isn't alone in this cursed forest. Do you need help, sir? Toshinori nearly jumped out of his skin when he heard someone's voice inches away from him. It startled him bad enough that his body refused any and all cooperation. He spent few next seconds coughing blood. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to scare you, voice exclaimed, but not without panic, trying to redeem his guilt by gracing Yagi with handkerchief. Toshinori took item with gratitude. Don't sneak on people like this, my boy. For a moment I was sure I was going to go down from heart attack, he said with a deep exhale of breath, finally managing to calm down his coughing attack. After that he finally took a good look at young man he had stumbled upon. He was wearing hood. That's fine. Who would want to get attacked by ticks, right? It's better to be safe than sorry after all. Again, I'm sorry. I thought my steps were loud enough, boy murmured with shame permeating through his apologetic tone. Toshinori sighed, wondering if age is catching up to him. Or maybe it's just the fault of this strange forest. It has already showed him how much it dislikes him. Eventually it just loves him to the point of not wanting to let him go. Alive. Then I just must have been lost in thoughts, he decided, not wanting to wonder more about this bizarre subject. Instead, he forced his sad, skeletal checks to friendly smile. As for your question, I would be grateful if you helped me get to the city. I'm ashamed to admit it, but this old man just go himself lost in forest, but well, even bests of bests makes mistakes, am I right? Don't worry about it. This forest is known for making it hard to find your way back. That's why I sometimes come here to make sure no one got lost. What a heroic attitude, Toshinori said fondly. His expression, in this form, wasn't made for showing his happiness, but that won't stop him. He isn't number 1 hero without a reason. He can do anything if he puts his mind and muscles to it. That's nothing really, boy stated modestly. Frankly, compared to what he normally did to save people, helping the ones who were lost because of malicious fairies, not fairy, but those tiny sparkling assholes, was a pleasure. No fighting, murdering, and he doesn't even have to act as negotiator. He just needs to get out of their illusion and that's it. The end of story. The two of them started their trek back to the civilization, but it didn't take Yagi long to furrow his brows in consternation. He could have sworn that they had already bypassed this tree. Are you sure we're heading in the right direction? He asked offhandedly because getting lost on his own was bad enough. He didn't want to be a reason why some random passerby got forced into living in forest just because they wanted to help him and none of them could find the way out. Yes. Don't worry about it. This area may look the same as the one we had already left behind, but that's because you're not from here, Stranger explained, and Toshinori took a breath of relief. So hooded person actually knows where they are going. Phew. This forest is rather specific, Hiro noticed after a moment of silence. Can I ask you, sir, what were you doing here in the first place? I thought I had heard child crying. But in the end I didn't find anyone, so it must have been my imagination. Oh, I understand. Happens. It happens? Sadly. That's why one simply should avoid this area. Especially when being on their own. What a bizarre place. I didn't even fully moved in and here I am, already going through such bizarre adventures. Yagi murmured to himself with tired sigh. This area is full of such extraordinaries, so please, take care of yourself, sir. I'll keep this in mind and thank you for your concern, young man. Few steps later Toshinori was ready to kiss ground. Because he noticed the end of this cursed forest. Finally. Freedom. He won't have to become a man from the wild after all. So, we're here, Hooded Boy noticed, staying within the line of trees. Indeed. Thank you for your help, my boy. Without you I don't think I would be able to get back here. And it would be better for everyone not to see All Might jumping out of the forest. It would be a rather worrisome experience. Not only for villains. It's no problem at all really. But here. I have some homemade tea. It is good for pain relief. With your worrying condition, the blood coughing I think it could be really helpful, sir. Yagi blinked, looking at offered sack with incredulous expression. Is he carrying things like this on regular basis? Ah, no need my boy, you have already helped me quite a lot. I insist. It's no problem at all. Toshinori took gift with subtle smile. You're a good kid. Never change, he said and tousled his. Boy reacted with smile that shined with the added power of rays of sun gently touching his joyful expression. Yagi turned around to look at the city. Though, maybe be more careful with strangers. You may never know who they are. But enough of that. If you don't mind me asking, where are you going? I have a friend who I'm going to meet, he said, taking few steps forward but stopped both his walk and sentence when he realized that he's lacking interlocutor. He looked behind but Hooded Boy wasn't there anymore. My boy. But nobody came. It happened, right? Yagi still had sack of tea and he's pretty sure that he had lost at least hour on purposeless stroll through some strange, most likely cursed forest where there is no signal. Maybe kid hid behind some tree because he wanted to disappear mysteriously? Yeah, that's definitely what happened. Toshinori laughed to himself. Youth these days? In another dimension his class would have probably laughed at him, but in this one, well, crimson eyes holding promise of thousands years of pain were good enough of a warning for everyone. Even people can understand this mute, this nerd is part of my pack, so he's getting into UA no matter what the fuck you think or want. Kind of. They didn't know how their friendship got fixed, through someone's death, but everyone knew that those two are in good graces of each other. Shockingly so, seeing how belittling Bakugo was towards pretty much all of his classmates. To be frank, it was strange and completely incomprehensible in their eyes. From their point of view it made no sense. Strongest person in class, who thinks about people as extras, being friends with the weakest part of their generation. Someone who doesn't even have power and his nickname is pretty much an equivalent of useless. But what can they do? Some braver souls tried asking about it, but in his nice days Bakugo would dismiss them with scarily murderous glare or really unfriendly, go figure it on your own, damn extra, while Midoriya would shrug with sheepish smile. Further questioned he usually stated that, it just happened. When class ended Bakugo leaned over Izuku's desk. "My nerd. You're up for a town stroll?" he asked with quiet growl, demanding submitting to Alpha's will. Midoriya might have been part of his two-person pack, and by extent proud beta. Hooray, but he wasn't wolf nor werewolf, so he had absolutely no problem with denying request. "Sorry Kaken, but I'm going through very important spells with Mom today," he answered quietly so the two students waiting for Katsuki wouldn't hear him. "How important?" Bakugo asked with irritation. "If all goes well I will learn materialization," Midoriya said, and his smile became brighter. Seeing as Katsuki's face was more skeptically angry than anything, he decided to give example of what he was on about. With a little higher level of understanding you can make dynamite from nothing. Bakugo's reaction was grin so predatory that probably no other creature could hold candle to it. Except, maybe, Mitsuki. Such a monstrous grin. It makes it hard to believe that no one has ever realized the beast he really is. To be sincere, if Izuku wasn't used to it, and haven't been saving people from bloodthirsty entities on daily basis, he would probably flinch. How strong? I would say that on scale from 1 to 10 it would beach school stopped existing. Have a productive day then, nerd. Katsuki stated with huge grin, and then he left. Midoriya shook his head light-heartedly, took his belonging and started his journey to get home. He was tempted to use magic as shortcut, but he decided against it. Every practicing wizard knows that they should get as much fresh air as they can. Especially when they know that they'll spend few next hours with ancient, magical books. And it's not like Izuku doesn't like learning. He loves it. Just after hundredth-something page letters start dancing Macarena and brain is begging for freedom. And Izuku, more like his extremely packed schedule, doesn't have time for it. Being which is hard enough without school. And yet here he is, also having hunter's responsibilities. Izuku sighed deeply, but moments later he stopped dead in his tracks. There was something foul wafting through the air, straight to his nostrils. He quickly turned around and came face to face with snot-like mass. Slimy creature seemed surprised by his fast reaction. "Hi," being murmured, and Midoriya instantly sprinted away, listening to his intuition. "Hey, where do you think you're going?" Creature wrapped itself around him and Izuku started panicking. He was so used to bloodthirsty beasts that he had no idea what to do when he met humans with such murderous intents. Especially when they had strange mutation-type quirks that made them look inhuman. Not that it happened too often to him. Actually, it didn't happen at all. What is wrong with this day? No worries, kid. I'll just borrow your body. It won't even hurt that much. Just give me a second. Entity started slow process of cramming itself between Izuku's tightly clenched lips. And then through his nose. In the end, even his ears weren't safe anymore. Midoriya's mind was a battlefield, full of mute cry for help and tenths of various spells that would have helped him if he only could say them. He never put too much thought into learning nonverbal magic. After all, he could always whisper words so quietly that no one would hear him, right? Why should he waste his precious time on something so advanced when there was so much basics to get through? Now it came back to bite him in the ass. After few more seconds, Midoriya's panicked mind went into override, and he focused on magical power running through his veins, ready to pull it forward. He didn't care in what shape it would come out. It could be endlessly tangled and useless or as destructive as All Might's full-force punch. He was starting to see darkness, and he didn't have any more time to waste. Suddenly he was free. He has flown backwards, landing on ground and instantly starting to cough. But he didn't have time to focus on getting his breath back. Magic itching just under his skin was ready to explode outwards in attacks so unpredictable that even he had no idea what would do. It took him few, worryingly long, seconds before he was able to placate it. Phew. It would be bad if some kind of hero saw him doing something magical. Yeah. It didn't sound as scary as it actually could be. "Everything's okay, my boy?" He heard someone's worried voice from above, but his answer was, "Talk to the hand gesture." "Okay." It was, "Wait a moment, but hey. You could interpret it both ways." He coughed once more, and when he was sure that he won't start vomiting parts of slime that tried possessing him, how else could he call this strange occurrence? He looked up. His first reaction was to blink in complete and utter shock. Then he made a rather undignified sound of surprise. And admiration, probably. Paul and might. What happened next was a roller coaster of emotions. Midoriya got autograph but didn't get to ask his question, so he decided to get for a ride with his favorite hero. It might have not been his brightest idea, but let's be sincere here. He did a lot of much more dangerous things on daily basis. At least Symbol of Peace, unlike most of the creatures he meets on average of 3 times a week, doesn't want to kill him. Probably. After the stunt he just pulled that might change though. Then they landed, and it just so happened that within seconds Midoriya was monologuing about how much he wants to be hero even though he's quirkless. Being which, and so, magic, doesn't count. After all, he can't use it against villains because keeping magical heritage is a very important duty. And maybe he could pretend that it is his quirk, but if someone realized the truth, Well, he would rather not have it. He'd like to reach his adulthood in one piece, okay? And also his mom would most likely send him to another dimension if he as much as casted shadow of doubt at his family in regards to magic using. Witches used to be, and still are, extremely cautious since the time of Dark Ages. Of course nowadays they aren't hunted even half as badly as back then, but old habits die hard, don't they? And no one wants those blood-soaked days to come back. Back to the point. Definitely took Izuku some time to realize that some kind of smoke was coming from his favorite hero, but when he did finally notice, he was face to face with blonde man from forest. The same one. Fairies tried to draw into the heart of the forest and leave him there for few hours, maybe days, before Midoriya could give away his hunter persona by vocalizing his thoughts, and he would most definitely do it after stopping screaming. All Might explained his malnourished form, and then kind of crushed boy's dreams and left. And here I was thinking what a nice day it is, Midoriya murmured to himself with sigh. Without any other delay he headed down, dragging his feet a bit. I even put on bracelet from that nice girl today for good luck. At least I have All Might's autograph. He was just coming to agreement with his internal pain of symbol of peace told me that I can't be a hero without quirk by the power of quiet, ironical yep. It's high time to move to fairy realm when he saw explosion. Of course, he rushed in its direction. He quickly realized who was the reason of ruckus and well. He was running before he could rethink his life choices.